You can start.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. It is Monday, January 10th, 2022, first public meeting of the new year for the workshops for the commissioners. Want to welcome everybody and call the meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Thank you for being here. I'd like to start off with a roll call. We'll start Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Mayor Stan Mills. We have a full complement of 7 of the mayor and commissioners, so we can formally conduct business. Welcome, everybody. And I want to welcome those that are watching virtually. As you know, this is a virtual workshop meeting of the commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach. Out of an abundance of caution, and because of the public health emergency and state of emergency, we are for the foreseeable future conducting our meetings virtually. Also like to thank the members of the public that have pre-registered to speak today, and those include Carol Everhart, Walter Brittingham, Mike Strange, and Dr. Michael Trejos. Thank you, and you know the protocol is we'll call on you at appropriate times during the meeting to get your feedback and input on the topics that we are addressing at that time. Also like to remind everybody that support documents, when available, are embedded in the agenda, available on the city's website through the city's portal. And today you'll see a whole litany of support documents that are accessible to the public. With that, I'd like to make note that the 330 Rehoboth Avenue topic, we're deferring public comment on that. The applicants can speak if they want, but we're deferring public comment on that to a future meeting, at which time we would be conducting any votes to move that forward. And that's the appropriate time, I feel, for public comment on that. With that, we want to go to correspondence. And the correspondence as received in time for embedment is already included in the agenda, as you can see. And with that, we'll go to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, commissioners. The work on annual road improvements is nearly complete with the resurfacing of Maryland Olive and Surf Avenues. However, work has been delayed recently due to weather conditions. After temperatures warm up later this week, the city's contractor expects to get back to work on milling, paving, and utility adjustments on Lake Avenue. Completion of repairs related to water main replacement on Maryland Avenue means no parking on that street the day that work is to be done. Signage will be posted there. Also, Stokely Street extension remains yet to be paved. Striping will be completed when the work is finished. In addition, the water main near the Delaware Avenue Comfort Station has been relocated, so that work is complete. Work on the 1A bridge over the canal for DelDOT. They'll be doing some work overnight, including concrete spall repair and sealing concrete on the 1A bridge over the canal. That'll be in the next couple of weeks. This nighttime work requires a lane closure, and paving will be done in the spring when the temperatures warm up. As everyone knows, we're Planning Commission is looking for written feedback and comments on the current draft of the Comprehensive Development Plan. And the written feedback is due by close of business this coming Thursday, January 13th. The CDP draft and public comment form are available on the CDP update webpage at cityofrehoboth.com under the government tab, and then via the current city projects pages. While current comments are strongly encouraged, there will be other opportunities for residents and stakeholders to add their comments on the CDP during various meetings and public hearings this coming spring. Stormwater Utility Task Force, the deadline for applications has been extended to this Thursday, January 13th. More information about the task force and an application can be found on the legislative portal meetings webpage. If you scroll down to the Stormwater Utility Task Force, they can be found there. And next Monday, Martin Luther King holiday, city offices will be closed in observance of Martin Luther King Day. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move on. I would like to pause a second, and I meant to identify city staff that's participating today. We've got City Manager Sharon Lynn, Kevin Williams, Superintendent of Public Works, Evan Miller, Projects Coordinator, and Glenn Mandalis, City Solicitor. So sorry to skip you all. With that, we'll go to the City Solicitor's report. Glenn?
The only thing I wanted to mention is in the Ocean Baymark case, there was some question about when the appeal period runs. The court entered the final order on December 27, so the appeal period is 30 days from that date. So we still have a little bit of a window for an appeal, but if we get through this month, we'll be done with that case.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree? You're muted.
Counselor, to what court will that be appealed?
So we just finished up in the Court of Chancery. So the appeal from the Court of Chancery goes to the Delaware Supreme Court. That's the final court in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glenn. With that, no committee reports have been identified. We'll go right into old business. First item of old business is discuss proposed amendment to Chapter 270 zoning code, amending section 270-4 by adding a definition of new applicable to section 270-46.1.2 relating to tower-based wireless communications facilities, non-tower wireless communications facilities, and small wireless communications facilities, and providing further for the regulation of such wireless communications facilities. As you know, there was we were in public hearing, and there was a little confusion over the extent of the proposed amendments. The original proposed amendments were furnished as a red line, utilizing the entirety of the chapter 270.41.1.2. And that was so overkill, if you will, because there was only one sentence that was being proposed for amendment. So that's why a new amendment has been put in front of you. It's embedded in the agenda. It's only one page long this time. And again, it clarifies. So we can discuss that. But I would suggest that since we're in the middle of a public hearing, Glenn, that we can just put this on the agenda again to continue the public hearing. Is that right?
That's right, Mayor.
All righty. So I don't know that there needs to be or should even be any discussion of that today. But the second part to this conversation is a recommendation by constituent Mike Strange at previous meeting to insert BATEA, best available technology language, into the proposal and including inserting it into the design manual. And as you can see from the support documents, CTC, our professional consultant, responded to that and disfavored that recommendation. So are there any conversations about that topic? Commissioner Legree? Unmute yourself. Unmute.
I really do take exception to the answer we received from the consultant. There are a lot of questions that still are in my mind. The first of which is, how are we going to evaluate new technology that is installed or proposed in the years ahead? I mean, I'm not qualified to know if we're being correctly served by the telecommunication companies. I don't know at all how to judge those things. Who will know how to evaluate the proposed changes that come down the pipe. And as this letter said, this is a fast moving technology and there are changes all the time. And I'd like to have an answer to that question.
Sharon,
They're what?
asking Sharon for to help with the response.
Okay.
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner LeGray, I think as we move along with the consulting services, the consultant themselves, we can always retain them again when needed, but at least for right now, that's the recommendation from the consultants who we're paying. So I hear what you're saying, but I think if maybe you can, talk to them, we can have them at a future meeting. Possibly that will clear up some of your questions.
Thank you. And another question I have is, and I don't know, what is the extent of their contract that we have right now with TCC? How long does it last? And will they be here to help us when we start fielding these proposals from telecommunications companies?
Yes, they will be here. They're, I'll say on retainer, that we can call them whenever we need them. So there's not an end date for their services. That they'll always be available to us.
May I ask another question? There was talk earlier, and I'm not sure whether other municipalities are doing this or not, but there was talk about having our consultant operate our portal and make sure that all applications were current, using latest technology, and the application was fully in order. Have we gone forward on that, or are we still fielding these applications ourselves, or are we indeed going through a portal that might be set up by the consultant? And have we discussed that at all?
So as of right now, we have not been in touch with Verizon or AT&T or anyone else for several months. You'll recall that back in the fall, there were discussions, and they were supposed to get some information to us by September, October, but there has not been any contact from Verizon or AT&T.
So it sounds like there haven't been any new applications coming in.
The last applications that came in were late summer. Yes, correct.
Okay. And are we having our consultant review those applications? Do we have plans for that?
If they're reactivated, the consultant will certainly be looking at them. But for right now, there's no reason to move forward with those.
Okay, I want to go on record as being still in favor of the best available technology clause. I can see things in the future that we would really need that. Although I understand that the consultant could find no evidence of this definition being in the telecommunication ordinances of any of the cities, and I too could find none. But I sure hate to see us just dismiss this out of hand because the consultant decided that it probably wasn't the thing to do. And I agree with her letter that said to staff and train and bring experts up to date to hire for the city would probably not be a great idea, and certainly not efficient. But we have to have somebody who can evaluate this technology. I mean, because I certainly can't. I've talked before about having an oversight committee, and I've received no response on that. I still believe that that's a vital need for our city, an oversight committee of experts who can evaluate these things. We'll just see what we do as we go along. Thank you very much, City Manager. I appreciate your response.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Susan, Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, I actually share Jay's concern about just dismissing the best available technology language. And I guess my main question would be, if it doesn't hurt, if it can only help going forward. In other words, if the consultant thinks it's, not really necessary, but it doesn't detract from it, then I don't know why we wouldn't include it in the event it's needed. I mean, as everybody has said, this is a very fast moving field. My other concern about it is just that we've been back to the well, 3 times now with the ordinance, and we keep improving. I mean, as we go along, it was obviously done much too quickly the very first time, and we've improved it as we've gone along. But it strikes me that if we don't include it, then we may be back again. And so I just wonder about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you. Sort of a follow-up to Commissioner Legree's question to City Manager Lynn. If memory serves me correctly, when we were initially negotiating a contract with CTC, there was that clause, if you will, or option to have them establish and manage the portal, and all the applications really come to CTC for review and processing. Is that something that we're still investigating, or is it a one-off aspect, or is it application per application, or something that we're going to do across the board? Has any of that determination been made?
Well, when we are looking at applications and reviewing them, CTC will certainly help and give their guidance and experience. The fact remains right now that we're not pursuing those applications that we already have in because there has been no communication from the carrier. So certainly CTC will be available to us and we'll pursue that.
But it has not been determined that they're actually the ones that will manage and administer the applications as they come in. That will still be done in-house?
We'll do that in-house, but we'll do that also with CTC because, obviously that's partially why we hired them.
Right.
We want them to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp?
I just want to support the position and the concerns of Commissioner Legree and Gay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let's go to the public then. Carol Everhart, do you want to say anything on this particular topic?
No comment.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham?
No comment, thank
No
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Mike Strange?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, I did submit.
Please be mindful, we have that letter sent to us earlier. Go ahead.
Okay. That really says it all. And I was disturbed, quite frankly. I agree with just about everything that CTC has done. And I think the quality of their work has been excellent. However, in the area of beta, their letter basically indicated they have no experience in this area. And I checked all their staff with regard to their credentials and their areas of expertise. And they have no one who has any experience in systems psychology as it relates to technology. And it turns out that's what I've taught in and done for close to, well, Jesus, now almost 50 years. What's important is the fact that the reason beta, which was now almost 30 years old, has not migrated into other areas. And it's really because of a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding in other technologies. And the reason they couldn't find it in anywhere else in the wireless space is because it hasn't been used in the wireless space. But in the document that I created, and I can create a lot more reference material and background material so that the commissioners can feel more, city manager can feel more comfortable. What beta does is address exactly the concerns that you all have said. This is a fast-moving technology. And essentially the code that you're about to implement, even with all the refinements that CTC has put in, is unfortunately in several areas already obsolete. But there's no way to get around that. So you have to drive a stake in the ground. But the way you make it more flexible and responsive is by putting beta in there. And Dr. Michael Trejos, and we both have similar backgrounds. We both hold PhDs. We're both FCC licensed commercial technicians. and we're also FCC licensed amateur radio operators. In that particular area, he had commented that achievable versus available. And the reason the history of beta has achievable versus available is that unfortunately you get into a rather legal argument that if something isn't available at the instant that someone is coming in with a particular technology to implement in wireless, you could end up always going forward into the past and not moving into the future. So it's absolutely critical that this concept of achievable be left in. And there's a myriad of documentation that supports this. And I would just make one physical comment that relates to technology currently being used to put up 5G and quite frankly 4G and all of it. Doesn't really make any difference what G it is if you look at some of the installations within the city right now, those that require Delmarva power installations to support the particular tower, you'll notice that there is a standardized meter pan and meter on every one of the installations. And it's the same meter pan and meter that's been used for decades with minor modifications. There has been existing off-the-shelf technology that Beta would address in that situation that is currently available that could be used to take that particular visual aspect of the tower and put it into the size of a pack of 2 cigarette packages. That tiny. It's commercially available off the shelf. It's been available for 20 to 30 years. And the reason it's not implemented in this particular case by Delmarva Power on an installation for an antenna tower has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with their own inventory management and standardization in their field. So you have various levels of conflicts here going on, and Beta is the way to address that on a forward-going basis. And unfortunately, in this particular case, CTC really has no experience in that area whatsoever. I think that says it all. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'll respond to it.
Thank you, Mike. Dr. Trejos, are you available?
Yes, Commissioner. Yes, Mayor Mills, I'm available. Thank you. I just wanted to dovetail Michael Strange's excellent review of the matter concerning BAT at this time. I wanted to reinforce the aspect again that you can have best available technology economically achievable versus economically available. Most telecommunications companies out there are going to want to do it the cheapest, fastest way they can to maximize their profit. And we need to be always mindful of the fact that there exists achievable technologies, yet not necessarily to the economic benefit of the company. Here's an example to try and maybe bring this home. We're currently dealing with 5G, and in previous testimony that I've given before the Board of Commissioners, we're in less than 10 years, we're going to be looking at 6G. And again, as I made in previous testimony, if we all believe that the number of 5G towers are going to be a problem, just wait for 6G. It's going to be an exponential growth that's going to be seeing poles up and down every single street in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Now, there are ways to minimize the number of antennas going up. Technology exists, and I believe at one point I may have, I think Commissioner Legree, I think I had passed some information on to you about this. The concept of what we call transmitter combiners and transmitter and receiver multi-couplers. Now you're saying, well, what in the world am I talking about? Technology exists where you can combine multiple transmitters into one antenna and multiple receivers into one antenna, thereby minimizing the number of antennas on a pole. However, this is expensive. It is not cheap, yet it is achievable. So we really should have in the ordinances the best available technology, economically achievable, even though it may not be economically feasible to the wireless telecommunication company. And thank you. And that's all my comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate that. Any further commissioner comments?
Yeah, I do, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I had wanted to divide my comments between what we were talking about, the specific topic of the Vadia before and this, but I have a second comment, a completely different one. She has Julia Elias sent us this memo, and the last sentence in it, the last paragraph talks about the consistency between the wireless ordinance and the design manual, which I think is partially in response to a question I raised at the hearing that day. And I do understand that once we pass the ordinance, since the design manual is part of it, that even if it's still in the works, that it's subject to the pending ordinance doctrine because this is in the zoning code. I get that, but the last sentence says that any conflict between the two documents that may arise throughout the design manual revision process will be resolved prior to finalizing the design manual. I guess I just wonder, is it safest to just do them at the same time? I'm concerned that if we pass the ordinance again, I'm wondering if I just don't want to get ahead of things again, like we've done in the past. Should we do them simultaneously so that we make absolutely sure that once the design manual is done, we don't have to go back and change something else in the ordinance? I don't know what the status of the design manual. I can't remember.
Well, we're waiting for committees to evaluate them and bring back recommendations. So the earliest the design manual would be back on the Board of Commissioners agenda would be the February workshop. Since the design manual is not in the zoning code, but it's referenced within a zoning code, can we just amend it like a normal code, Glenn, or do we have to go to a public hearing?
You know, Mayor, that's an interesting question, because I think part of the reason we did a design manual is to avoid having to go through the rigors of the zoning code amendment process. But if it's referenced in the zoning code and incorporated by reference, I do feel as though we probably should use the rigors of a zoning amendment change to adopt the changes to the design manual.
So let's talk about time frame, Commissioner Gay. We've got we have the ability to put the proposed amendment to the wireless zoning code that's in front of us back to public hearing at the January regular meeting.
Yeah.
Talk about if we defer to the design manual, then probably the earliest that we would be able to do that would be to have a public hearing in March or even April.
Yeah.
So I think there's a time component there. I think we're lucky so far that AT&T and Verizon haven't come back to us. So for me, there's more of an immediacy. I don't know, Sharon, do you have any input? Or Glenn?
Well, I guess my view is as Commissioner Gay said, the ordinance relating to the definition of new has already been introduced. So it's in a pending ordinance doctrine status. So any new applications that come in are going to have to comply with that definition of new. So the immediacy maybe is not so urgent, and you might be able to wait and do them simultaneously to be sure that everything's consistent. So I think I kind of gravitate to Commissioner Gay's position that we might as well do them at the same time since we've got the pending ordinance doctrine in place.
All right, as long as we have that understanding that it's going to push it out another 2 or 3 or so months.
Right.
Okay. Very good. Anything else, Susan?
No, I mean, I think that just means that we would be doing one hearing for both instead of 2 separate hearings anyway. So I think that's good.
I would give us extra time too if we go forward with Batia. Commissioner Gossett, and then Commissioner Legree.
Yes, Mayor, you had mentioned that we're waiting for responses from committee comments or what have you on the design manual. Is that what committees are charged with that?
The Environment Committee and the Boardwalk and Beach Committee.
And have we given them deadlines as to when to respond?
I believe so, but I best double check.
All right, so those comments then will come back to you as mayor and then to CTC, or how is that process being managed?
Myself and then to commissioners.
I'm sorry, you broke up. I couldn't quite hear your response.
They would come to me for distribution to the commissioners.
Thank you.
Because it's in our ballpark, the further discussion of the design manual.
But
Go ahead.
With the changes or suggestions that those committees may have, would they be incorporated into the design manual by CTC or by the city?
They would wait for our response before they're automatically acted on.
I'm, okay, I'm sorry. I'm
Anything
not-
else?
just not clear on the process as to if we will get a red line document of the design manual with the committee suggestions included in them? Is that where you're going, or?
I can ask whatever form their recommendation comes in. If we want it in a red line version with that specificity, then that's fine. But their recommendations, they will be indicated to send them to the mayor and commissioners for our consideration at the next meeting that we talk about the design manual, so that it's in our ballpark. The CTC is not going to make any changes without our direction.
And you feel that we did have provided deadlines for those committees to respond?
I believe I did. I need to double check.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Legree, and then Commissioner Sernowski.
Yes, you gave us the Boardwalk and Beach Committee a deadline of 25 January, and we are reporting at the next workshop. Those were your instructions.
Okay.
And I'm still hanging with Commissioner Gay's recommendation about the BAT definition. If it doesn't hurt and if there's no downside, let's talk about it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Sernowski.
Thanks, Mayor. If I could just follow up on Commissioner Gossett's comment, at least from the Environment Committee, we've had some discussion this past week. I don't think that the Environment Committee will have very many recommendations or changes. They're quite impressed with the work that BTC has done. I'm sorry.
CTC. Earlier, Commissioner Legree said TTC, but it is CTC. Okay, we got it. CTC.
And the one clarification that I was looking for was the best available technology. That's one thing that they were interested in. This meeting provides some clarification on that. I don't know that it's going to bring us any conclusion, but they were very much interested in that being a part of the ordinance and the design manual. So our next meeting is the first Friday in February, whereas I hope that we have it wrapped up, but I don't expect a lot of changes. And this was the one sticking point that we were interested in, or that committee was interested in. And then I'd like to just echo my thoughts about incorporating the best available technology as a commissioner, and just want to incorporate the other comments that Commissioners Legree and Gay and others have made.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I guess I'm in the minority because I understand the BATIA, but I'm not willing to go against our consultants' recommendations. I think it can be handled outside of putting it in the code. You know, it would frustrate me, frankly, to, so let me start again. My expectation is that CTC will be with us for the long haul and on some kind of contract, and that they will help us in future evaluations of applications, but they'll also be on call for future evaluations of updates of our code. And my expectation would be as technology changes that we do update the code and the design manual to require certain things. I just am not a proponent of acting against the wishes of a consultant that I expect to be on board. And I guess what we could do is we'll let them go, and we'll hire a consultant that is knowledgeable in BATIA. But according to Mike Strange, there are none. Right. So how can we do that? And you know, the time we have to invest, you know, we've got a majority now, so I guess we can move forward with it. But we have to invest somebody's time to insert BATIA into the zoning code and also within the design manual. So there are a lot of instances, there's going to be a lot of time to do that and effort. And again, I would be embarrassed to ask CTC to do that. So I think we're going to have to do that in-house. But I, for those reasons, disfavor it. But we have a majority that would like to go forward. So we'll do that. We'll have to look at our time frame to be able to do that and present it to it. But that works well into postponing the public hearing that we would need to consider adoption of the amendments to the zoning code as well as the design manual. Is there any further comment?
Yeah, Mayor, I would just like to get the city solicitor's opinion. You know, I completely understand what you're saying with, you know, having CPC around and updating the document as technology changes. But in reality, that just doesn't always happen. And it's part of the reason why we have such a messy building code. So having verbiage like this that carries forward every time there's a change without actually updating the ordinance, I think there's some value in that. And I would just like Glenn's opinion on that.
I guess what I could offer is the one thing I found a little bit interesting in the consultant's memo is that, you know, she said you're going to have to very well define what is best available technology economically achievable, because she said it seems that part of Rehoboth Beach's largest interest is the aesthetics view of things. And, you know, so she said maybe the best available technology economically achievable doesn't satisfy the aesthetic requirements that we're trying to achieve. So I found it compelling that she said you're going to have to do a good job defining what is best available technology economically achievable in the context of the goals that Rehoboth Beach has set out for its ordinance. So, you know, I think it can be done, but I think she's right that we're going to have to be very careful, because you might get best available technology economically achievable, but it might not satisfy a whole other category of goals that we've got kind of built into the ordinance.
Glenn, that's a very good, valid point you just made.
Anybody else? All right, we've got a path forward. We need to amend the agenda or edit the agenda proposals to include Batia in both the wireless ordinance as well as the design manual. And that our future meetings will probably revolve around that and receipt of recommendations by the Environment and Boardwalk Committee. And so we'll just move forward with a little flexibility there. If there's no further comments, well, thank you. And we'll move to the first item of new business, which is to discuss a recommendation from the Planning Commission concerning an application to change the zoning designation of a portion of the property located at 330 Rehoboth Avenue. And the tax ID parcel is noted in the agenda. I had not intended for lengthy discussion among the commissioners on that, more to identify what I expect the process would be. As you know, the original, and Glenn, you helped me out here, but the original application to the came to the mayor and commissioners, which was then passed on to the planning commission. They've acted on it and they've made their recommendation. They've passed that back to the mayor and commissioners. So now it's in our hand. And even though the planning commission majority disfavored going to a rezoning, it hadn't ended there. It's still in our hands, and we need to discuss what the disposition is. My expectation would be that at our next meeting, at our January 21st regular meeting, we would put on the agenda consideration of adoption of a resolution to go to public hearing in this matter, in which case, Glenn, help me out here. In which case, there can be two options for that. One is we can vote to go to public hearing, conduct a full public hearing, and make our decision. And alternatively, I think the code is unclear there, but alternatively, we could possibly vote to not go to public hearing. Glenn, help me out there a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Mayor. The change in zoning is at your discretion. You have the police power to do zoning laws and regulations. So if there's no interest among the commissioners in going to a public hearing, you wouldn't have to go to a public hearing. But if there is interest, that would be the time and place for public to give comments and for you as a board of commissioners to consider it on its merits. But like any zoning law, it's your discretion whether you want to take it to a public hearing or not. So as the mayor is suggesting, at that meeting, you could choose to vote to go to a public hearing or not.
Thank you. So I'd like to go that path, that at the January 21st regular meeting of the mayor and commissioners, we consider a resolution to go to public hearing in the matter, and then move forward with one of the two routes just articulated. Are there any questions among the commissioners? Hearing none. Yep, go ahead, Commissioner Gossett.
Yes, just I would support that moving forward and taking this to a public hearing so we can hear from the public. But I would also support if we could, there's been a lot of correspondence and testimonies provided to the Planning Commission to help them make their decision and their recommendation to us. So I'd hope that that material could also be available during our public hearing for reference material.
Thank you. We've got the representative of 330 on the phone. David, not expecting you to say anything. We really wanted you to listen in, but we'll give you the floor for a few minutes if you'd like to say anything.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and commissioners. I do not want to take this opportunity to review the application, and I'm sure you're all grateful for that. But as was indicated, and as I understand the process as it was just explained, that is the applicant's desire is for the city commissioners to take this matter to a public hearing and for this rezoning application to be considered and decided by the city commissioners. As the commissioners are aware, the reason why this change of zone application is there in the first place is because this was the preferred process when this application first began. And I think everyone is aware, there was a lawsuit that delayed consideration of this. And then after the resolution of the lawsuit, the Planning Commission picked back up its consideration. But this all started with seeking the change of zone for this property as that was the preferred method. And that is still my client's preferred method as well. And we look forward to hopefully participating in a public hearing to present this change of zone application to the mayor and commissioners.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hutt. Any further questions for the commissioners? If not, thank you. We have our direction and we'll move forward as articulated. With that, the next item of new business is item B, discuss parking issues, including but not limited to, and you can see the 6 or 7, 8 bullets there. These were brought forward by Evan Miller, who is superintendent or supervising the parking department. And he'll explain that there are time constraints on some of these and what those time constraints are, why we have to act on these, some of these sooner than later. I will say that the last 2 bullets I put on status of meterless Mondays program and status of takeout parking spaces, just in case we wanted to talk about them. They are really, those were implemented during emergency measures, so they can be talked about anytime in the future. However, for both of those, there is a revenue component, if you will, because they consume parking spaces or lack of having to pay the meter. And so maybe they would even come up at the budget meeting, if not now. With that, I'll turn it over to Evan Miller.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor, commissioners, members of the public. So before you, the first 2 bullet points are actually ordinances that are included within the agenda as support documents. I think we had mentioned at one of the last meetings when we were talking about parking ordinances that we would have a few more brought before you all before the start of the summer season. So the first is the residential rental licenses to be exempt from receiving 1 free parking pass as a business. And I'll just share my screen with you all. So an ordinance to amend Chapter 92 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach by amending Section 92-263 relating to issuing of parking permits. This amends item B8, which describes that each individual business agent licensed to do business in the city shall receive at no charge one seasonal transferable permit, and that the permits issued under this subsection shall become invalid if the referenced business agent ceases to hold a city license. The point of the ordinance here, the amendment before you, is to exclude the residential rental license holders. It's my understanding that Gene Lee and Glenn had some correspondence from a member of the public, and that we felt it was necessary to clarify that the residential rental license holders would be exempt from this section of the code. So I can entertain any questions you might have.
I believe it reflects common practice today. So to me, it's just a clarification, and I think it's a very good one. Anybody else? Commissioner Legree, Commissioner Legree, unmute yourself, and then Commissioner Gossett.
Evan, I'm a little bit unclear of the problem that we're trying to solve. And I think I know, but a commercial license holder can have a transferable permit to hang in any pickup or vehicle that they are using to do work in the city. Is that correct?
Without the ordinance in front of me, I am not sure. I know this section does deal with the business agents being able to have or receive at no charge one of the seasonal transferable permits. The residential rental license, so if I understand the code correctly, they are eligible, the property owners are eligible to receive free permits, transferable permits, and non-transferable permits. And then also the year-round tenant of those properties are also eligible to receive a permit as well. Glenn, you might be able to recall some of the conversation that occurred early on when this ordinance was discussed, but that's my understanding, Commissioner.
And I remember the problem that we were trying to solve was for license holders who would put up a sign in their windshield that said, "We're working here on Prospect Street," or something like that.
Correct.
And this to give them a transferable hang tag solved that problem. And it also solved the problem of 5 or 6 workers. In my case, they were filling our street up. 5 or 6 workers who would come and park their cars with working for the same company.
Yes. Yep, that's correct.
And that solved that, by the way, and I congratulate you folks for figuring that out. And I think this rental license transferable, what are we solving? Are we solving a problem where multiple rental clients are parking their cars on the street? And
let me explain. We're getting off track a little bit. My recollection, I don't remember exact numbers, but Glenn, maybe you can look it up. But yeah, if you have a commercial business license, you're entitled to a certain number of free parking passes. It may be one. And what we had is a constituent come forward that has residential rental licenses. So he automatically is getting, because of those residential rental licenses, a certain number of free parking permits. In addition, they came to us and said, by the way, I consider a residential rental license as a business. Therefore, I should be entitled to that commercial free parking permit. And so that they were trying to get one extra freebie. And that is what this is designed to address. That, according to, going back to, like I started, that this takes us back to where we were prior to this interpretation by this person. So they don't get rental licenses, they get what they get. They do not get the double dip and then get a commercial parking permit also.
So all this is doing, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. So all we're doing here is reducing one hang tag from a rental license owner. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
What we're doing is getting rid of the opportunity to double dip by trying to get two sets of licenses, one for a rental business and one calling that rental business a commercial business. Help, Glenn, can you?
I think that's right, Mayor. It's just sort of a loophole in the code, and practically we weren't issuing two, and this individual said I should get two, and we said no, that was never the intent. So this ordinance is trying to fix that.
That's correct, Mayor.
So I come back to one hang tag? I'm just all tangled up here. I followed everything until we stopped allowing the rental owner to have an extra hang tag. What am I missing?
The rental owner is having an extra hang tag for their rental license, business license, but then they can also, the loophole, they can also get an additional hang tag if they apply. So that's what we're trying to eliminate, the two hang tags.
Well,
It's like a duplication of allowable permits. And so what this is a clarification of the code that that's not permissible, that that's not how it's ever been done. So this is to clarify the code.
thanks, Mayor. I'm just going to have to go on the phenomenal reputation of Evan Miller, which I'll do. Thank you.
Are there any further commissioners? We've got Commissioner Gossett and then Commissioner Sernowski.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I understand exactly what we're trying to circumvent here as someone is trying to use a loophole. But my question, and this is really to Glenn, do we have a terminology in the code that we really define rental license? I know we, charge by bedroom and number of bedrooms and apartments, cottages, and what have you, but is there the term rental license that is defined in the code as opposed to just business license? You're muted, Glenn.
That's a good question, and I do recall in the licensing section, I don't think that we have specific license called a rental license.
We do not. It is based and charged on bedrooms, cottages, apartments, efficiencies, that type of thing. So I think I certainly support this move, but if we're defining something that we're citing something in the code that we don't define, we need to correct that, if you will. I mean, it'd be as simple as, putting in a definition of a rental license, I guess, but just don't want to create another loophole, if you will.
Yeah, it is a good point. You could say with the exception of business license holders relating to residential rentals. Because you're right, business license is the term that's used.
That's the general term, is business license. And then, we issue, I think we've got like 195 different business license that qualifications under a business license. So just to sort of to clean it up. I mean, I'm very supportive of this, but I just want to do it the right way.
Okay, well, this won't be voted on until next meeting. So let me work with Gene to see if we can revise the language, keeping the intent in mind, but maybe revise the language.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner Sernowski, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one clarification. So there was some inference that rental houses get one hang tag and then they're trying to get another because they're considering themselves a business license. Rental houses do not get any hang tags other than 2 hang tags that every single house gets throughout the city. They don't get anything in addition to that. And what this is clarifying is that they should not get anything in addition to that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to go to the public, I guess, at the end. They can do all their comments at once, or maybe we'll do 3 bullets and then I'll go to the public. Let's go to the next item. Evan?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. The second ordinance before you is an ordinance to amend Chapter 92 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach by amending Section 92-249 relating to unattended motor vehicles. So there is a support document provided in the agenda. I can share my screen so you all can see it. The current code prohibits anybody from parking, storing, leaving, or permitting the parking, storing, or leaving of any motor vehicle of any kind in front of private property longer than 48 hours. Whenever the owner or occupant of the property in front of which the motor vehicle has been parked for complains to the city or requests that the vehicle be moved, the police department goes out within 24 hours. They put a notice on that motor vehicle that it has to be removed within 48 hours. And if it's not, they can ultimately be cited for that. The purpose of the ordinance before you today is to clarify that in non-metered areas during the Friday before Memorial Day through the second Sunday after Labor Day, which is our parking season, that we would authorize people to park in front of private property as long as they're within the street and they have a valid parking permit to be able to park for at least 168 hours, which would be 7 days, before the property owner could contact the city asking that that motor vehicle be removed. So after 168 hours, they could notify the city. We would go out, we would place a notice on the vehicle, again, requesting that they remove it within 48 hours. So essentially, we would be allowing individuals to park in the non-metered areas with a parking permit for up to 8 days without fear of being cited. The challenge with the code now is that a visitor comes into town, they purchase a weekly permit, they park on the street, and then they leave it for that week without coming back to it. And they are unaware that the property owners can contact the city and request that that vehicle be removed. So within 48 hours, it could be requested that it be removed, and they're not aware of that provision in the ordinance, and then they ultimately come back to their vehicle 8 days later and it's been cited. So this just clarifies that anybody with a parking permit can park on the street for up to 8 days.
Thank you, Evan. Leave that up if you would. And commissioners, remember, I can't really see you well raising your hand, so raise your hand and speak up at the time. I'm having a little challenge with this altogether, frankly, but I had to look at it in this way. Both A and B start with a certain number of hours that trigger the opportunity for the property owner to make a complaint. And after that complaint is made, a violation notice has to be implemented by the enforcing agency within 48 hours of the complaint. And then the vehicle owner has to move their vehicle within 48 hours of the violation notice, or they end up in violation. Those two processes apply to both A and B. The difference I see, of course, is the duration. There's a 24-hour duration for A and then for B, there's 168 hours, which is 7 days. By the way, the synopsis is in. I want to go to the synopsis. Go to the synopsis right now, I guess. The synopsis to me reads this, how it should read, I believe, is this ordinance allows individual with a valid parking permit to park up to 7 consecutive days during the summer season without being cited. So I think that needs to be clarified on there. But back to A and B, the difference I see for A is applicable to out of season in all parking areas. So that would mean even in a metered parking space on Rehoboth Avenue, or a metered space on Baltimore, or unmetered space on Maryland. The difference for B is it applies only to the summer season and only in the non-metered areas. I'm just struggling there with, what is the maximum duration that should be allowed? 7 days in front of somebody's house is a long time. And would we prefer that they be forced to move as we try to do in the commercial areas? So I'll leave it up for comment. Any commissioners? Commissioner Legree and then Commissioner Gossett. Jay, you're muted still. Start over.
I think we have a problem that maybe we're skirting around, or I just don't know, because to have someone park in front of my house for a week, and I have had that happen before we got the curfew, and come back to take a shower or something, is a problem. And I don't know, I know of a house near me which has more than just 3 or 4 tenants. They have a number of tenants, and they park on the street, and those cars don't move for the week, or sometimes they're here for 2 weeks. But I see this would take care of that. And 8 days is 192 hours. But I too am struggling with just what this should be. Is our intent to allow any client of a rental to park on the street for as long as they're there, or what problem are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve the one that I just described, which is having somebody park in front of your house and never move the car for a week or 8 days? I just need guidance. I need somebody to help me understand where we're headed here.
Well, I don't think it's specific to rental property tenants. It can be to anybody. If I came and parked my car down in front of your property, I'm allowed to do that according to this for a certain duration before you have the ability to complain, and the police or enforcement agencies react by putting a notice of violation on your vehicle. I want to acknowledge correspondence from Hoyt Decker to 14 Laurel Street. He did not get it in time, I don't believe, to be embedded in the agenda, so it was forwarded to the mayor and commissioners, and his comment was basically indicating that allowing a car to park 7 days in front of his property takes away his opportunity to park in front of his own space, essentially.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen in front of Sandy Beaver's house. I've seen cars parked there for over a week. But my problem is whether we want to solve that problem or not. Does that need solving? We've solved it on Queen Street and Prospect Street and East Lake Drive, as you know, because we have a curfew. But
So
thank you. I'm just going to listen.
Commissioner Gossett?
Just the trying to put this together. I think one of the issues that's come up before us is that we have, had complaints to me personally from people that, they'll see people drive up basically from Dewey, park a car, loaded with beach chairs and umbrellas and everything else, and then drive back to Dewey and stay in Dewey, and then take the Jolly Trolley up to Rehoboth, open up their trunks, get all their stuff out, go to the beach for the day, go back, put all the stuff in the trunk, and take the Jolly Trolley back to Dewey. So I think that's one of the issues, is that, they just use it as a storage area. And then in the hours here, to me, we talk about 7 days, but isn't it really, if you've got 7 days then the owner can make a complaint and they have to wait 48 hours, which is 2 days. And then the owner has another 48 hours to make a move. That's really 11 days before any action takes place. So I think that needs to be in this consideration too. I just don't feel that, being a parking lot for Dewey or other areas is what Rehoboth needs to be honest with you. I just think that, if we come up with 2 days or 3 days maximum and 24 hours notice is what I would feel more appropriate, because it does roll into, the 7 becomes 11 days with the 2 48-hour periods for notification. And just other comments there about moving the car. I know it's a technicality, but I would suggest the inclusion of the phrase not so moved 1,000 feet or more, because somebody could get in the car and move it, a half a tire turn, and they say, well, I moved the car, so what do you want? Give me another 48 hours, another 48 hours. So I think that, the moving of at least 1,000 feet or more should be included to update the language here. And that's about all I have at the moment.
Evan or Sharon, Chief Banks had some concerns about this or input on it, I believe. Can either of you articulate what his concerns were?
Sure, Mayor. Thank you. So let me just first start by clarifying. So the 168 hours is the 7 days. And then by the 7th day, the city would go out and be able to place a notice on that vehicle that it has to be moved within 48 hours. So the intent would be, if they purchase a weekly parking permit, a weekly parking permit is 8 consecutive days. So the requirement that the city put the notice on the 168 hours after the complaint from the owner or occupier, and then the additional 48 hours to be required to move the vehicle leaves us at the 9th day. So it would have to be removed by the end of the 9th day, allowing them to be able to park for the 8 consecutive days which they purchased that permit for. Also, this is not intended by any means to specifically target rental properties, just anybody who utilizes a weekly parking permit to be able to park for the 8 consecutive days. I did talk with the chief. We actually worked with the chief on this ordinance. The chief is, I think the police department is frequently contacted by property owners requesting that they remove vehicles. So in 2021, they had 62 calls regarding private property owner requesting that a vehicle be removed. But he did not specify, he wasn't able to clarify how many of those complaints were based on somebody blocking a driveway as opposed to just being parked in front of their property for longer than the 24 hours. But he had in total 62 calls for 2021.
Yes, Mayor, this is Chief Banks. I'm on the line.
Oh, good.
Yes. My concern has always been, since this ordinance has been in effect, is that people come in town and buy a pass to be able to park on the side streets. There's nothing to tell them that within 48 hours or so, they need to move their vehicle around. So I think we need to put some information on there or update and update this ordinance as we're discussing today, because I truly don't think it's fair to the people that have good intentions that are running a property or visiting friends, whatever. For a week, they find a spot, they park their vehicle and they leave it and come back a week later, or 6 days later, whatever the case may be. And there's tickets on the car, or it's not there, it's been towed. And so I'm just looking out for our visitors that come in, that I think they need some clarity too. So I think we need to update this ordinance, or we need to put something on our parking permits to notify people, to make them aware of that situation. And all, because I just don't think intentionally people are always leaving their vehicles there. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Chief. Any further comments by commissioners? Commissioner Shanowski, please.
Yeah, thank you. I struggle with this, Mayor. I think it's in some part it's pretty absurd that we have visitors come in. We allow them to buy a weekly parking pass, and then you know, they have to park in front of somebody's house, and whoever's house they park in front of can call and within 24 hours and say, this person parked in front of my house, and then they're getting ticketed and towed. And fortunately, I don't think very many people know this ordinance even exists until now, which they will. And in 2022, I assure you, there's going to be a lot more people calling, doing the same thing. It's just a little absurd. So I am in favor of the extension from 1 day to 7 days. I think it makes sense. We've done absolutely nothing to communicate to our visitors in the past that this ordinance exists. I don't know how we would communicate it going forward in any effective way. So those are my thoughts. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further commissioner comments?
Yes, I do, Mayor.
Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, I have to say I'm really troubled by this because while I understand that someone coming in with a rental is renting a house for the week. We used to do this when we rented. You know, we came in and didn't get in the car for the week because we did everything on foot. I get that, and I get how that person should be able to park. On the other hand, it troubles me greatly that we have become this parking lot for Dewey and maybe even other surrounding areas. It's something I've heard about for years. It was interesting to see Hoyt's letter basically confirm what I've also heard anecdotally from others. And, you know, it's like we're sitting ducks because we have more public parking on our streets than anywhere else around. And so, you know, word has gotten out and we've become this parking lot for the area. And that's just not right. I don't know what you do about it to protect those who have a valid rental permit versus those who are parking here and going to Dewey for the week. But, you know, frankly, I think this is moving in the wrong direction, and to just make it a blanket policy. So I'm very concerned about it. I guess the other question I would ask, I think I know the answer, but I'll ask this just for clarification, is this only pertains to parking permits. So in other words, an owner who has a sticker on their car could leave it for 2 months and that'd be okay, right? Even if it weren't in front of their own house, right?
Well, remember, if it's in front of their own house, they would have to call a complaint on themselves. So they would be exempt.
In front of somebody else's.
I think the intent, Evan, I think the intent here is whether it's a parking permit would include a sticker or a hang tag.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so it is everybody. Okay, that's fine.
I think we also need to be mindful. It's not just that Dewey situation, if you will, but you know, people legitimately renting outside the city or in a hotel room for a week outside the city come in, and you know, they come in at some point of view, but likely they would park and then go back rather than parking there for 7 days or an extended period of time. So again, I'm a little conflicted with this. Evan did not preface all this with time deadlines. You know, we're doing this now. We're trying to address some of these things because the Chamber of Commerce likes to print any change in codes or emphasize what parking codes are in their annual brochure, and they've got a deadline unknown, but it's coming up. We have the same thing, I believe, Evan. We have our own parking map that we publish and want to, of course, update the website with any changes.
That's correct, Mayor. And I was going to bring that point up as we continue the discussion and go into the other bullet points. But yes, we are, you know, we're bringing some of these things up now only because we want to work on the communication plan. And if it is so that we are not going to pass an ordinance such as this, and we're going to keep in the requirement that if a private property owner complains within 24 hours, we go out, mark the vehicle, and ask it to be moved within 48, that would be something that because of you know, the increased attention on this, you know, that would be something that we'd want to communicate in our parking walking guide and on the city website as well. Just the notice that if you are purchasing a weekly parking permit or a seasonal permit, that you would be required to move it in that event.
Well, and you could also have that printed on the permit itself, couldn't you?
That's correct, Mayor.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I want a little more time to think about this, get a little more public input on it. I'm not ready to rush this forward for this year. So if we don't go forward with it, then I think we do need to do some more marketing of it. Are there any, here we go. Commissioner Bennett, then Commissioner Sharp, please.
Yeah, I think that I agree with what everybody said, that I think this is fraught with some misinterpretation. I guess my question, and I'll use Henlopen Avenue as an example. I was unaware that as a homeowner, you could complain that somebody had parked in front of your house. I was under the impression that that was open game. And I know that along Henlopen Avenue, there's some people that have essentially taken over the city's parking lots and made it their own parking space, and versus other people that do have other areas where people can park with a permit. So I think this just is going to open a can of worms. I mean, are people, as a resident, am I entitled to park in front of my house?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody 2 doors down is also entitled to park in front of my house as a resident, right?
On Henlopen, on Laurel Street, on
everywhere.
Yes.
Right. So what is the? I guess I'm confused by them. What's the complaint issue? I understand that people using the cars as a locker.
Well, part of the concern that we're trying to address is anybody who does have a valid parking permit. Right now, if the private property owner complains that the vehicle's been parked there for 24 hours, the city has to go out, mark the vehicle, and then it's required to be moved within 48. So if you have, for example, somebody who does rent a rental property for a week, if you have a private property owner who has family that comes down, they give them a permit and they happen to park in front of somebody else's house, that property owner could complain that the vehicle has to be moved. So it was really just to try and give some leeway to the visitors to be able to park up to 8 days without that fear of being cited within 48 hours after it's been tagged by the city.
Right.
So really just to allow them to park a little bit longer than what currently exists on the code.
And I don't know the rule perhaps, but if I rented for 2 weeks, could I at the 6th day go buy another weekly pass and just keep my car there?
So again, the vehicle would actually have to be moved regardless of the length of the permit after the notice has been put on within 168 days and then the 48 hours after. So regardless, the vehicle would have to be moved within 9 days. This would just, again, be a little bit more accommodating to the weekly permit holders, seasonal as well, but it would put a time limit on a vehicle being parked there consecutively, just from the, the 48 hours right now to the 9 days.
And one final question, Evan. I appreciate you answering these questions. Have we looked at just strictly residential parking as it pertains where there's issues where people may be parking and using us as a parking lot? I know other beach towns have done beach block or 2 or 3 blocks from the beach. They've just made residential parking. So that alleviates some people just coming in at night, putting my car there and leaving it there for the week and then using it as a locker. Have we ever looked at that?
Would that be like strictly residential permits where only property owners or
people in town that have stickers on the
Sure.
car would be full-time residents or residents?
I don't know of any study that's been done to look at just Rehoboth Beach residents. The question I could see is, where are they allowed to park? Why are they allowed to park in front of my house and not your house? Where do you designate those zones? Things like that. But to my knowledge, no, that has not been looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sharp?
While we were talking about this, I was reflecting on who is it intended to benefit? And I think Evan just answered it, and I want to just get some clarity on that. I think he said it's intended to benefit the visitors so that they get some additional time to leave their car in a certain spot. Did I get that correctly, Evan?
Yes, that is sort of the main beneficiary, I would say. And it really comes down to how do you define visitor? In one case I gave, you could be a property owner, you have family coming down, so you give them one of your transferable permits. There's no available spaces in front of your property, so they have to park in front of your neighbor's property. Well, then that opens up the opportunity for the neighbor to call and complain.
Well, I think I concur with those who have mentioned that this is a bit troubling to think about and try to navigate through what some solutions are. And one of the things I reflect back on are all of the parking recommendations that were given to us, including myself as a commissioner, a couple of years ago, where a really holistic view was taken of the whole city of things we couldn't, and maybe should consider doing. So maybe that will gain some traction one of these days. But I agree, this is really something to think about and try to come up with a reasonable solution.
I also, thank you, Commissioner. I also find this somewhat challenging. I don't know if anybody's given thought to, who monitors the number of days? Who's out there counting? Because certainly our parking enforcement people aren't recognizing and identifying the car and what day they parked in an area, and whoops, this is at 7 days. It's all dependent upon the property owner saying, yeah, I remember they parked here Monday, January 5th or July 4th or something, and haven't moved in 7 days. And then that means that our enforcement agency has to have faith in that person. And I'm surprised that would even hold up in court. What I'd like to do is let's go to the members of the public and see what they have to say. Carol Everhart, I think, is on a governor's call. Are you there, Carol? Nope, she's on the call with the governor. I believe Walter Brittingham. Michael Strange. Dr. Trejos. They may have had their topics already passed by then. Well, can we agree that we're not going to solve this today, that we need a little more thought by all of us, and maybe we can get some more input from our constituents, and that by doing that, we'll put it on the next February workshop meeting, and also understand that we may not resolve this particular one before summer happens.
Mayor, if I,
yes, sir.
Just as if I could add to the consideration topics here, we know that our quote season is expanding greatly. So is this application really need to be made only from the period of, the official parking days of Friday before Memorial Day to Sunday after Labor Day? It sounds as if the police department is the one that really enforces this, not our parking department. So if we make this change, whatever change we decide to make, shouldn't this really apply throughout the year so it's consistent if it is enforced by the police department as opposed just to the parking season, the official parking season? Just if you'll add that into the mix and consideration, Evan, when you're working to kind of bring this back. I just think consistency may be easier for everyone to apply. And again, the paragraph A, Mayor, as you had pointed out, is with no restrictions at the time of the year or specific to non-metered areas, as to paragraph B addresses those. So perhaps we just address this in a whole manner of throughout the year, as opposed to just the time in which we sell permits.
Evan, do you want to respond to any of that real quickly? You had a rationale, I believe, for having out of season and then in season, different time constraints.
Yeah, sure, Mayor. Thank you. So I will go back, Mayor, to your comments earlier, but about how you interpret A and B, and that's correct. A really is for year-round, regardless of metered, non-metered areas, et cetera. But I would just say that if the concern is that, vehicles are coming into town and they're parking for extended periods of time, I'd be hesitant to remove the seasonality of item B, only because if we were to do that, then year-round, regardless of metered, unmetered areas, people would be able to park up to 9 days. So if there is a concern about vehicles being parked for extended periods of time, I think it may make sense to keep the seasonality in there, but certainly open to any comments, input from the commissioners.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll bring this to a close, but we'll go to Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. I just, we're putting a big spotlight on something that I think a lot of people are unaware about. So I just want to be very conscious that if we make no changes, we're going to have a heck of a lot more than just 61 complaints this year, people calling about vehicles in front of their house. I want to keep that on the back of our minds.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll put this on our February workshop meeting for continued discussions. If you all have any ideas that you'd like to share with Evan, please contact him, and we'll also see if we can get some feedback from our constituencies, hopefully, on this. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to our next bullet. Evan?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor. So the remaining bullets are really just items that I know, in years past as we begin budget discussions tend to come up. And so again, just being cognizant of the fact that the parking season is going to start, within 4 months, we like to just try and get ahead on some of these items, put it out there for consideration, discussion amongst the public and also the commissioners. So some of those bullets I've listed there, just, thinking back to years past during our budget discussions, have been things that have come up. So they include the parking season, the start and end times, parking time limits for spaces down at the bandstand. You'll recall we had done 1.3 hour maximum parking down around the bandstand. We're now at 1 hour. Talk a little bit about, parking time limits elsewhere, if there's any plan to do any time limits elsewhere. Parking fees, not only for meters, but also for permits. And also, put out there the status of any meterless Monday initiatives or takeout parking spaces. So really, I don't have any support documents for these topics. It was really just, items that I wanted to get out there in front of the commissioners so we could start to talk about it now. Again, we're 4 months out from the parking season. There's a lot that goes into preparation of the season. We alluded to some of those earlier. The chamber does their visitor's guide. The city does their parking walking guide. We start to purchase parking permits around this time. And just trying to plan, think ahead, and especially with just delays that we've seen in materials, production, things like that, want to get ahead of it and just, start to talk about some of these things so we have a plan moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Evan. Oftentimes we conduct our first budget meeting and then we seek out extra needed funds and turn to parking. And so this is kind of backwards. We're starting with parking first. Why don't we just go down through the individual parking bullets in order there and see if the commissioners have any comments or appetite to move forward on any of these things. Parking season, start and stop times. Commissioner Sharp, you had your hand up?
Keep going, Mayor. I'll come back to it.
Okay, you have a specific bullet you want to talk about. We'll get to you. Parking season, start and stop times. Is there any appetite to make changes? I know, by the way, I wanted to tell you that Carol Everhart had intended to be here because she's wanted to share opinions of the Rehoboth Beach Chamber of Commerce. I believe she has talked with her liaison, Commissioner Susan Gay, so maybe she can convey some things. Carol is intending to be here, but there's a emergency conference about the COVID with the governors today that she's called away to that. Commissioner Gay, did you want to address parking season, start and stop times?
Yes, first of all, Evan, I was very pleased to see this on the agenda. I'm pleased to see all of these on the agenda because, of course, every year we go through this where Carol reminds us we have a deadline for the visitor's guide, and we bump up against that deadline every year. And I know that she can hold a page. So I believe we have maybe until close to the end of January, but even with her holding a page, that's it. And it's like we have to decide. But I also think it's timely because we're going to be talking about, starting with the budget this afternoon, and parking is one of the items on the budget. So all this goes together very well. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the season, frankly, there are two elements there. And this is something I've wanted to talk about for several years now. The biggest element is the fact that we're the only community that doesn't have specific dates. This Friday before Memorial Day to the second Sunday after Labor Day is not something that most people can remember. And every other community has specific dates. So I think we need to do that right off the bat. More importantly, or just as importantly, I did a little survey of about 8 communities in Delaware, New Jersey, Maryland, and Virginia, and we are far and away the shortest parking season. So we're leaving money on the table. We're giving it away. Visitors are coming in and parking, free in Rehoboth where they can't anywhere else. In Lewis, for example, the season is May 1 to October 14. Whereas in Dewey and all the communities south of Dewey, it's May 15 to September 15, which is like the second shortest time period. And even if we did that, we would pick up about 10 days. But in all the others, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, they all go to the end of October. And in talking to, and frankly, I think it spreads out the responsibility of those who use the city contributing to it to a wider base. And I think there's some equity in that. In talking with Carol, I think she would like to see us keep the end date in September sometime, whether it's September 15th or September 30th. She's okay starting earlier in May. But I think we need to talk about that because, as I say, we're the shortest season, and I don't know why that should be with all the services that we have to offer.
Anybody else? Commissioner Bennett, please.
Yes, thanks for doing that work, Susan. I appreciate it because I looked at some other municipalities as well. I was always in favor of April 1st to November 1st. Meaning that, when we finish with Seawitch at the end, but starting in April, people start funneling into town quite a bit. And I would be in favor of an April 1 to November 1.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Anybody else? Commissioner Shanowski and then Commissioner LeGree.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to be clear. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself and my personal opinions and not that of liaison for any other groups. But I've always been in favor of extending the season at least from May 1 to the end of September, potentially the end of October. But my question for you, Susan, is in your research, are a lot of these municipalities using the same rate, or is it a cheaper rate in the beginning of the season and then it sort of tiers into peak season rates?
I didn't look at that level of detail because I was doing this very quickly. I will say that in the case of Cape May, that they're typically are May 1 to October 31, but there are some parts of town in their central business district by their pedestrian mall that are actually April 1 to December 31. So they have different seasons depending on the parts of town. I do think this is something I guess Evan can help us with. It seems like if we've gone, totally toward with the Park Mobile, that system allows us to do a lot of things that we couldn't do before in terms of variable rates at variable times. So, I would be very open to that, but I did not do that level of detail with this.
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner. I will add too that the new parking pay stations that we've installed give us far greater flexibility for things like that. I mean, Meterless Monday is a perfect example of, that's maybe a 15-minute change from a software configuration side. Whereas the older meters that we have, it can take days to get those changes through. So yeah, certainly the combination of Park Mobile and the new meters both give us good flexibility to certainly change seasonality, rates, things like that.
Right.
Commissioner Gay, you indicated, the chamber indicated an end date of September 15th or September 30th would be acceptable to the chamber. Did they give you a proposed start date?
I think she was comfortable anytime in May. So May 1 would be the outside, and May 15th, one or the other.
Okay. So we've got response from Commissioners Bennett and Chernowski that are willing to consider extending the time. Is there any further comments by any of the commissioners? Commissioner LeGree?
I agree with Commissioners Gay, Bennett, Chernowski. I remember though, Mayor, and you were a commissioner at the time, and I believe Commissioner Sharp perhaps, and maybe Commissioner Gossett, when the city manager recommended extending the parking season to the end of, I believe it was October, and there was a barrage, and the mayor at that point endorsed that. And I think there was a barrage of negative feedback. And I think the mayor said at the end, he would never bring that up again. I think you probably remember those words, but I'm with the folks who want to go April 1, November 1st. I believe we need to do it. We have gridlock that we shouldn't be having in October and November. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess there could be a philosophy where the parking meter season should reflect the densest visitation in town, in which case extending it earlier and later would seem to, especially later, would seem to make sense there.
Mayor, may I comment?
But yeah, let me just finish my thought, Sharon, and we'll get to. But Sharon, Susan, I think it would be worthwhile to follow through on Commissioner Bennett's note of do any of these other municipalities have a flexible payment schedule, you know, where it's cheaper in the off season than it is in the season. Sharon Lynn?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment briefly that having come from another tourist resort community, my experience is that the least complicated for everyone, tourists and visitors alike, is to be consistent, not have different rates, not have different time periods, not have the week, 2 weeks after Labor Day to, right before, to have specific dates. We brought this up in my time at least twice. It was not accepted by the commissioners, but if you're intent on going there again, I would just say that be as consistent as possible and make the dates just. My recommendation is April 1 through October 31. That I've said that before, but to have different rates, different times, different parts of the city is just very, very confusing to folks. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Anybody else? Commissioner Sharp, please.
It was just an overall comment. For the purposes of the upcoming parking season, I wanted to get clear on exactly how much time do we really have to think about and make any changes. Because Evan rightly states that we're 4 months out from some critical dates. And did I pick up that by the end of January, the chamber would really like to know what the decisions are? Yes. So I guess I was kind of curious, how would we proceed to actually finalize and make decisions by the end of January, which is coming very, very quickly? And coupled with the fact that am I correct that we do not have a committee at this time that could support some discussion? Because I really resonate with what Commissioner Legree just talked about the barrage of negativity the last time that some of these things were brought forward that turned out to be historically unpopular with our residents. Yeah.
Well, as you know, the parking committee was changed to the task force so that they would be available on demand. Then we actually totally sunset it recently, but we have the opportunity to reestablish it. I would think that at this point, we are not going to make the end of the January deadline in this way. Okay. I like and want to and request that anything that goes forward, we introduce it first. And we haven't introduced anything yet. So when would be the first time we would introduce this? Unless we introduce it at a regular meeting in January 21st, we would likely introduce it with the specifics at the February workshop. And then the soonest we would vote on it would be the February regular meeting. But it likely could even go later. You know, this is something that I'm not sure I want to absolutely rush to the maximum. That I'd like to get a lot of feedback and comments, and even among us, we may not all agree on the proper dates and rates and all those things. But I definitely don't think it can be rushed and resolved by the end of January.
Mayor,
Thank you, that's helpful.
if I could just make one comment as well. So I agree it doesn't necessarily have to be rushed. Just one thing I caution is if there is interest to do an April 1st start of the season, not saying that there is at this moment, but I know it's been brought up. April 1st would be the start of our budget, which means that we would need to start procuring a lot of the supplies and equipment, including parking meters, right now. So it is timely, as Commissioner Gay mentioned, that we were talking about the parking budget this afternoon. Just trying to be cognizant of that if there is interest to do that, that drastically cuts back the time frame we have to implement those things for this season.
Any other commissioners?
Yeah, I just have one comment, if I may. I do remember the public comments back when this was discussed under the previous administration. So just something maybe that Evan could look at, because I think this comes down to dollars and cents of the revenue produced and lost at that time. And I know this goes against the comments that the city manager made, but I do support extending the season, but might be the consideration for April and October for weekends only, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That way, Monday through Thursday would allow, if you will, the locals to come in, still off-season in their minds and not pay for parking. But you know, the stronger out-of-state visitor, weekend visitors, what have you, would be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I know this has been used in other municipalities. I don't know the success rate or what have you, but just something else for consideration. Again, I think this should come down to the budgetary thoughts of revenue that we need and can produce based on setting the meter rates and also the seasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan, we're going to target you, I guess, to come up with some different scenarios for the February workshop. Is that all right with the commissioners? Hearing no objections, then we'll do that, and we'll take some of the comments today and see if you can massage them and create some different templates, Evan.
Sure. And certainly if there's any recommended scenarios that the commissioners would like to see, please let me know so I can make sure that I include those.
In fact, it would be helpful for each of you that have opinions to re-articulate in an email to Evan so that he's got them, because there's different components to it. There's the season, when a start and ending time. There's the rates schedule. Is the fee going to stay the same, or because of an extended season, might it go down a few pennies or nickels or quarters for the season? And then Commissioner Gossett's made mention of weekends only. So please send those forward.
Yes, and I'll also just mention too, as you're thinking of parking meters, think of the parking permits as well. Right now, our permit season reflects that of the meter season. So the start times, days are the same, enforcement hours, same with the end dates. So just think about that as well. I will just, so everybody's aware, the existing season, Friday before Memorial Day through the second Sunday after Labor Day, we enforce from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. And then we do have variable rates. So we have $3 an hour on Rehoboth Avenue from the boardwalk to 4th Street, and then also on Baltimore Avenue and Wilmington Avenue. Everywhere else is $2 an hour. So if there's interest to make the entire city consistent at $3 an hour, certainly let me know if you're interested in that. But right now we do have variable rates.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next bullet item, which is the parking time limits for spaces in the bandstand area. Commissioner Sernowski, you'll recall you brought this up many months ago. In fact, during the summer, I believe, and we just said we would defer it until a future time. Now is that time. And I know that I think the chamber has conveyed to their liaison some interest on. Ed, do you want to re-articulate what you had in mind?
Sure, Mayor. I didn't specifically have anything in mind, but several business owners complained about having, I think you'll remember, it first started the first summer of the pandemic. Some of the businesses around the bandstand didn't want the 12 hours. They thought it was too long. With it being more of a sort of a transient area, people wanting to stop, get an ice cream cone, see the beach, see the boardwalk, jump back in their car, move on. So we ended up changing it to 1 hour 2 summers ago. We instituted it back at 1 hour this season under the pandemic, this past season. And some of the business owners again said, well, an hour isn't, we don't want 12 hours, but we don't want 1 hour. It's not enough time. People are getting french fries and ice cream and still getting a ticket. So I went and talked to some of the other businesses in the area, and it was a mixed bag. Some people were happy with the hour, some people were not. I think Evan walked around and spoke to some of the businesses as well. I think his input was also inconsistent. So I brought this forward back then out of the request of some of the businesses, but I don't particularly have an idea or an answer per se.
Anybody else? Commissioner Gay.
Yeah, I know that, I mean, Carol's main point is that, to make it consistent, basically to say throughout town, 12 hours unless otherwise posted. And the otherwise posted would be the fact that I think Grove Park is limited to, I believe it's 3 hours. It's either 3 or 4. And the 30-minute spaces. And I can't recall, Evan, right offhand how many, but wasn't there to restore some of the 30-minute spaces?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to share my screen right now. Thank you, Commissioner Gay. Actually, Carol Everhart and I had gone back and forth probably over the course of the last week. So what you see highlighted now are existing 30-minute spaces. On the north side, we have about 9 spaces, and on the south side, 7 spaces. Her main concern was if we were to go 12 hours around the bandstand, that 12 hours would be too much time and that people would come, park at the bandstand, and go to the beach for the day. I did remind her that we have these existing 30-minute spaces zones now. So my thought would be that if we were to go to a 12-hour maximum at the bandstand, these 30-minute spaces would remain to help accommodate those businesses. She seemed generally in support of that. I know she was going to speak to this today, but I think she's tied up again with the call with the governor. But generally, that is what we talked about, was to remain, these 30-minute spaces would remain, and then elsewhere around the bandstand would be 12 hours.
Right. And the other thing she'd said to me was, just because the space is 12 hours does not mean that you have to use it. In other words, if you only want to be there for an hour or two, then you put in the money for an hour or two. That's Correct. The beauty of the new system. So in a way, I don't know why it matters, why we have to get specific about somebody, what the speculation is on the majority of uses and how long they are, because 12 hours kind of covers everybody, no matter how they use it.
Well, part of my recollection, valid or not, but my recollection from last summer is that, and Carol's making mention of it, was that people would pull into the bandstand area, pull out and find a parking space. Unbeknownst to them, it would be a 30-minute space. They'd get out, get up to the meter and find it's just 30 minutes and then be upset and then have to leave. So part of it, if I recall correctly, was having proper signage there so that the people could tell that there was a limited parking before they even got out of their car. Commissioner Czerniawski?
Yeah, Mayor, you bring up a good point, and it's not just in the bandstand area, but many of the 30-minute parking signs are very low. So you don't see them until you've already pulled into the parking spot. That is a problem throughout the city. So people pull in and then you have to back out, and it creates more traffic jams and whatnot.
Anybody else?
The question of this, what is the driving force or the main purpose of having limited time hours around the bandstand? How did that come about to begin with?
I have no idea, but I assume it's the same thing as for 30-minute spaces throughout the town, is to promote the opportunity to park for a short amount of time, that hopefully there would be available parking spaces so you can go in and just do a carry-out pickup or pick up at the pharmacy, et cetera. Evan, do you have any idea?
Yeah, no, that's correct, Mayor. I recall actually 2 years ago now when we had instituted the barriers to accommodate the pedestrian pathways. Some of the concern was that blocking the parking spaces prohibited people from visiting those establishments. So it was discussed to do, I think, the 3-hour maximum down at the bandstand to try and accommodate some of those pick up and to go visitors. And then it was ultimately changed to an hour because that was a little bit more, that reflected more the convenience of just picking something up quickly. 3 hours, we still had people who would park there, go to the beach, stay there for the maximum of 3 hours. So ultimately, I think the main change, or the change, was mostly due to COVID and trying to accommodate some of those businesses and their visitors.
But on that, is it possible though with Park Mobile that when your 3 hours expires, you can just renew it again?
That is possible, yes. But what we actually do is we're able to enforce separately. So our new license plate recognition technology allows us to ride through the bandstand area, scan license plates, and then come back within an hour, come back within 3 hours, and it'll notify us if that vehicle is still parked within that space. So that's primarily how we enforce this past year. The hour down there was, every couple hours they'd run through there and just ensure that people were moving after the hour.
Okay. Thank you.
So relative to this item, which is parking time limits for spaces in the bandstand area, does the parking department, having heard Carol's notes, have any recommendations for us?
We would certainly be supportive of the 12-hour and then keep the 30-minute spaces. That would just be consistent with, the rest of the city, obviously aside from Grove Park. And I think that would just, for consistency purposes, make the most sense in our opinion.
Are there any objections by the commissioners or further comments? All righty, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, next bullet, which is parking season, parking time limits elsewhere. We can throw it in with parking fees for meters and permits. Anybody have a desire and appetite to look at parking limits elsewhere throughout the city?
Just a comment or question. I would like to see if we could look at the current level of 30-minute meters in the city. Currently, they're the same 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. enforcement. But a lot of times when I'm downtown late in the evening or in the evening, after 5 o'clock, those 30-minute spaces are sitting empty because most people are not at retail, because retail is predominantly closed by that time, 5 or 6 o'clock, and they want to go to a bar or a restaurant or what have you. So at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, the spaces are empty because the need for the parking spaces for a long-term dinner or walking downtown or what have you. So I would think if we could investigate turning those 30-minute meters, perhaps on Wilmington and Baltimore specifically, to only be effective from like 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then turn into regular meters, if you will, after that hour. I know it's signage and those kinds of issues, but it's just a consideration that we're really losing revenue because those 30-minute meters are sitting empty probably from 6 o'clock on each night because people want to park longer than 30 minutes because they're having dinner or going to a bar.
Evan, are the logistics of that doable?
Fortunately, the way that we have the rates scheduled in the meters is, they could purchase more time than 30 minutes, but it comes down to enforcement. So for the 30-minute spaces, really all we would need to do is just signage mentioning that it's 30 minutes from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m., whatever it might be. And then after that time, it could revert back to, maximum parking time or until 10 p.m. We currently have, I can think of one space off the top of my head on Rehoboth Avenue right now, which I think operates that way. It's 30 minutes until 5 o'clock, and then after 5, it turns into a 5-hour meter, so they could park there from 5 to 10 if they'd like. So really, it's just signage.
And Evan, you'll recall at least maybe 2 to 3 years ago now, former Mayor Coons had us take a look at this, and we did at that time, I'm pretty sure, remove some of the 30-minute spots, and certainly there were more to go.
Mm-hmm.
Recall that?
I do recall that. I also do recall trying to take a look at how we better notify the visitors that those spaces are 30 minutes. So we looked at raising the height of the 30-minute signage so that people could see that it's a 30-minute space before they actually pull in. We talked about maybe painting the beginning of the parking space a certain color so people may recognize that it's not a 12-hour meter. But ultimately, I don't think that we had moved forward with any of the recommendations. But yes, I do recall taking a look at that a couple years ago.
Anybody, Commissioner Sharnowski and then Commissioner Legree?
I just want to echo my concerns that Commissioner Gossett made, and I'm in favor of, I don't know about 5 o'clock, but maybe after 6 o'clock, not utilizing those 30-minute spots anymore.
Commissioner Legree?
Evan, are we still getting complaints from residents who live in areas adjacent to commercial establishments about workers parking in front of their house after 5 o'clock or at times when that's possible? Are you fielding any complaints along those lines?
I don't know that we've fielded any direct complaints about that. I mean, certainly we've heard concerns about that. So I think that was part of the reason why back when the parking permits were only in effect until 5, we extended that until 10. But no, not as much anymore have we heard directly at the parking department about those complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the parking, 30-minute parking meters having truncated the time frame 10 to 5 or something, if you would, on any that topic or any topic, bring them forward to our February workshop, if you would.
Sure.
With that, we'll go to the next bullet item, which is parking fees for meters and permits. Anybody have an appetite for changing the fee structure?
Yeah, I just feel that that's more of a budgetary item, and whatever the city manager brings forward in the upcoming budget is her recommendations as to maintaining or increasing fees would be the more appropriate time to talk about that.
All right, when on our budget schedule are we due to talk about parking, Sharon?
Mayor, the parking is today.
Today, okay. Very good, very good. There's no further comments on this. I'd like to go to the members of the public to talk about any of these at this point. Carol Everhart, are you back on yet? Walter Bringham? Michael Strange? Thank you, Walter. Michael Strange? Dr. Trejos? All righty, thank you very much. We got the last 2 bullets, whether we want to talk about them now or defer to the parking discussions. Status of meterless Mondays program, status of takeout parking. Does anybody want to offer anything?
Well, I would just
Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, I would just remind you, this is one we do have to make a decision about because of the visitor's guide. So I think, we can't really punt this one into February. We would need to, maybe not the takeout space, but certainly the meterless Mondays, because that was featured very prominently in the visitor's guide before. And I mean, I don't mind saying I have very mixed feelings about it. I was in favor of it in the midst of the pandemic. I was definitely in favor of it in the summer of 20. And I have talked with Carol about it, and it was a great thing to do in that emergency situation when we were trying to get people back into town, but it was very much a mixed bag last summer and probably not needed. And certainly if our issue is crowd control, that doesn't help. If anything, it hurts. So I just don't know if it's still necessary on an ongoing basis. And I think she would agree with that. So that we do need to resolve it so we know whether we're going to have it next year or not. There's a revenue consideration as well. I think it was about, my recollection is something like $170,000 that the city loses on the meterless Mondays.
Evan, do you remember the revenue lost and the number of spaces?
I don't recall the revenue loss off the top of my head, Mayor. I believe the number of spaces was just under 50 that we had. We had about the same number of spaces consumed for Meterless Monday, or for the barriers that we did for the to-go spaces. But it was between 46 and 48.
Yeah, I recall the number of combined takeout parking spaces and meterless Mondays are the revenues, as you mentioned. I think it was a great program, especially the first year. Remember, it was only half a summer, and then we implemented it for the entirety of the summer. I think it served its duty, and I would like to see it sunset. Keeping in mind that if we have a big downturn and uptick in COVID and during an emergency situation, we could always bring it back and do the best to advertise it. But for now, formally, I would like to see us sunset that program. Are there any comments?
I would support that also. I think that it was a aspect or a marketing plan that was effective to the COVID aspect of our time. And some of that is behind us now. The restaurants have gone back to full 100% capacities. And in talking to several of the business owners, they've all spoken that they've had a great season. And also, we have 100% occupancy of lease space in town. So I think those factors, coupled with the aspect of the revenue loss from Meterless Monday, should bring us to the conclusion that it served its purpose and we move forward without it for next season.
Thank you. Haven't heard from anybody else, but Commissioner Sharp.
I was just going to weigh in that I concur, Mayor, with your position that we could sunset this without any great consternation on it.
Thank you. We'll head, hearing no other comments, Evan, let's head that direction on that.
Sure.
And then let's go ahead and tackle the last bullet, status of takeout parking spaces. I've got some comments. Does anybody else? Yeah, I love the takeout parking spaces because I patronize a lot of these businesses on a takeout basis. But it also frustrated me a little bit because of the lost revenue. I mean, there is a revenue cost to it. Some restaurants, we gave them 2 spaces and they took 3 spaces, and that is lost revenue because they're only entitled to 2 spaces. Also went to one restaurant where I utilized them up to a certain point, and then in the middle of summer or early summer, they stopped doing takeout orders at 5 p.m. But they still utilize their 3 takeout parking spaces the rest of the day. Now, how is that fair to anybody else and fair to the city? So I think some of them are taking advantage of it. But anyhow, for the same reasons, I think everybody stated for Meterless Monday, I would suggest that we sunset that program also. And again, we can take it back up on an emergency basis if COVID dictates. Comments?
Mayor, I agree. I think the program was abused quite a bit, especially towards the end of the season. And I agree with sunsetting it at this point.
Very much. With that, that is the end of our bulleted items. I do want to remind you that we got some correspondence from Sandy Beaver, constituent, lives on Lake Drive. It was too late to embed in the agenda. He has a topic on parking that he would like to have us consider for possible implementation for next summer relative to the parking of rental tenants cars on public streets. So if any of the commissioners are interested in seeing that on a future agenda, then let me know if you'd like to sponsor that. Again, we don't have a parking task force to send it to, unless the Street and Transportation Committee likes to take it. You don't have to decide. You don't have to decide right now, but I just wanted to recognize that his communication that we received. With that, if there's no objection, we'll go to the next item of business, which is just discuss establishment of a deadline for the Board of Commissioners hearing tree appeals. Susan Gay is going to help me on this a little bit. And currently, if somebody doesn't like a decision of the Parks and Shade Tree Commission or the city arborist, they can appeal it to the Board of Commissioners. However, there's no deadline on there. There's no time constraint. We have had an appeal filed, what, Susan, up to 3 years later.
3 years, yeah.
3 years. We've also recently acted on one ourselves that was, what, either 3 or 6 months after the fact. 6 months, I think. And like other things, they should have appeal deadlines in them. So rather than wait for the tree code review, which is going to start very soon, probably the 1st of February, and which though might take several months to resolve, I would like us to consider this simple change to a code to add a specified deadline in which you can file for appeals, so that we're not hearing them months and months and years after the fact. Commissioner Gay, do you want to
yeah, hold on a minute.
clarify anything?
Yeah, I actually looked at, and I'm glad you're bringing this up, because we don't have anything currently in the code. Hold on a minute. I'm going to have to adjust something here. I don't have any battery. Hold on a minute. We don't have any current time frame in the code, so therefore, you know, and that was the reason. That was really the only reason I was willing to hear that that case that we heard last month, is because you know, they absent any language in the code that they had the right to come forward at any time. The draft of the new tree ordinance, and I believe this is language that came from the Law Oversight Committee's review, does state it as 10 days. And that's very consistent with other provisions for appeals processes in the code. I found there were 9 other areas in the code for various appeals, and the great majority of them are 10 days. The difference, the one that's different being Board of Adjustment, is 30 days. So, you know, that's, I think that the tree code was deficient in that it did not state any time. Now, I do have a question based on something that I didn't think of till just now, based on something the mayor said in his introduction, but I see he's not sitting there, so I don't know whether to ask it or not. And that is, so I'll throw it out there. We can talk about it, or else I can ask Lynn this in the meantime. But I'm under the impression we're talking about here an appeal of the Parks and Shade Tree decision. But you mentioned, Mayor, in your introduction, an appeal of the arborist and decision. That's different. In other words, the appeal of the arborist decision goes to Park and Shade Tree. And I thought what we were talking about here is the appeal from Park and Shade Tree to the commissioners. Right? Glenn, remind me, is there a time frame that somebody has to file an appeal to go to Park and Shade Tree?
Yes, 30 days.
That is 30 days.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that's already covered. So what we're talking about now is the appeal to us, which has been done twice in the last couple of years. One time it was over 3 years, and one time it was like 6, 8 months. And, you know, everywhere else in the code, you get 10 days or 30 days. We just have to put some time frame in.
Mayor Mills, you're muted. You're still muted.
I did a Jay Legree, didn't I? Commissioner Gay, would you be comfortable in proposing a 30-day deadline for appeals that mirrors what we have currently for the appealing the arborist decision to the Parks and Shade Tree Commission? It could at least be a placeholder until we do a tree code review. But
That's fine. As I said, what's in the draft of the tree code is 10 days. But I mean, sure, I don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
Since I'm unmuted. Since
You are.
This was the time I had waited so long for. Since it's an appeal to the commissioners, I would go with 30 days. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Well, not hearing any other comments, then I would like to propose that in January, we look to establish a 30-day deadline on this, if that's all right. Very good. Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this? Carol, are you on yet? Walter Brittingham? I think Dr. Strange, Dr. Rehoboth and Mike. All right, thank you, Walter. So we'll go forward with that. Our next item of business is commissioner announcements and comments. I don't have anything, I don't think. I do want to compliment our streets workers for their snow cleanup. That was a heavy pileup, and I think they did a good job overall. I want to thank them. Pass that along, Sharon, if you would.
Thank you.
If there's no other commissioner, Jay, you have a comment? Oh, his hands is up. Review future meeting dates. Friday, January 14th at 2 p.m. The commissioners and the planning commission have a joint meeting in reference to the CDP, again, starting at 2 p.m. This coming Friday. And of course, our next meetings, we've got 2 other meetings today. What I'd like to do is adjourn this meeting at 11:13 a.m.
How about citizen comment, please?
I can renege on that then, and I'll let you go. Yes, Walter, sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate, I think the streets department did a wonderful job. A lot going on out there. But I would imagine that most of you are not aware of what was going on down at the streets department offices. I stopped down to talk with the streets department supervisor, and found him down in the break room, restroom area with a squeegee trying to push water out of the offices down there. There was literally almost 2 inches of water down in the area at the end of the garages where you go up into the administrative offices of the streets department. I think there needs to be an investigation. There was literally water flowing through, apparently not the first time. We have a $20 million city hall, and we're looking on streetscape, but we need to solve some drainage problems down there, and it needs to be done. Terribly disrespectful to the employees of the streets department. The city should be embarrassed. Kevin knows about this, and I think all of you need to know about it, and an apology needs to go back to the workers. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, Walter. With that, before we adjourn, I want to say that our next meeting, we will recess for 5 minutes before we start our next meeting. And that is a special meeting relative to the county initiative, the wastewater treatment facility, and purchasing a portion of the allocation of the ocean outfall. And then, as you know, if we're finished in time of that, which I hope we will, we have a 2:00 budget meeting, which is budget meeting number 1. Then we can all relax for the rest of the day. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 11:15, and at 11:21, we will resume with our next meeting. Thank you very much. And just stay on board.
Okay.
Because we're using the same link.
Someone has joined with the phone number ending in 8346. Can you please tell me your name?
IT, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I guess I'm waiting on Commissioner Sernowski, and then we'll begin.
Here.
There we go. So anytime you're ready, let me know.
You're good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is Monday, January 10th, 2022. This is a virtual special meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. This is following the workshop meeting. I want to call this meeting to order at 11:27 a.m. Thank you for being here. I want to start off by calling the roll. Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills is here. We have a full complement of the mayor and commissioner, so we're able to formally conduct business. Welcome, everybody. I'd also like to identify additional participants today. Evan from the city, Evan Miller, projects coordinator, Kevin Williams, superintendent of public works, Sharon Lynn, city manager, Glenn Mandela, city solicitor, Matt Janis, building and licensing supervisor, and also Jeff Sturdivant, our consultant engineer from GHD. Welcome aboard, everybody. And I want to thank the watchers that are watching virtually. I wish you could be here with us. Out of an abundance of caution, we are conducting meetings virtually for the immediate future. There are no speakers signed up to speak, so there's none identified. Support documents that are available are embedded in the agenda. Go to www.cityrehoboth.com, search the portal, look for today's meeting, and you should be able to find the documents that are embedded in the agenda, with the exception of a presentation that I'm going to start off with that was only ready late last night. The purpose of this meeting is to further discuss the Sussex County's request to purchase a portion of the permitted daily average load allocation, which is an equivalent of 2 million gallons per day of the city's outfall capacity. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, my expectation is to consider 4 elements of the county's request so that we can see whether we're going to further or not this topic. With that, I'd like to go to a presentation. I'd like to start with a review and some background and all that. And I would ask any of the staff identified that if they have anything to please speak up, because again, I can't see you on the screen. With that, I want to start. Obviously, today's minimize here, so I'm minimized, so I can't see anybody on the screen. Obviously, today's presentation has to do with our agenda item. I want to remind everybody that this topic started back in the 1st of November. We had a second meeting in the middle of November, a third meeting in the end of December. And of course, now a month later, this is our 4th meeting on this topic. I want to remind everybody that we had support documents for each of the 4 meetings that we had. They're shown here. We might make reference to them today, as well as they are embedded in the agenda and they're available regardless on the portal all the time. This is the 3rd one done by the city. And just for orientation, I'd like to reorient everybody that there's Route 1 and Rehoboth Avenue. You can see the general outline of the city there and where the wastewater treatment plant for Rehoboth is located. Also for orientation, Ocean Outfall is located. And finally, a depiction of where the Wolf Neck Regional Wastewater Facility is located, about 4 miles-ish from the city area. So it's relatively close proximity. With that, I want to remind everybody that prior to the outfall, pre-2018, this is an illustration of our wastewater treatment plant. And we were discharging, if you recall, directly into the Lewis-Rehoboth Canal, highly treated effluent, remind you. And then our influent came from not just Rehoboth Beach, but also Henlopen Acres and North Shores and Dewey Beach and the county. Then we installed the ocean outfall in 2018. And of course, at that point, we abandoned the discharge into the Lewis-Rehoboth Canal. And our influent came from the same sources, Rehoboth Beach, of course, Henlopen Acres, North Shores, Dewey Beach, and County. And the highly discharged, highly treated effluent was discharged directly into the ocean at that point. I would like to remind everybody that yeah, you can see that Henlopen Acres, North Shores, Dewey, and the county are our clients, but I'd like us to be mindful that the county is also a business partner. And they've been a great partner. They've been a partner for just under 40 years, and they provided a lot of financial support to us. This is one of their own slides. It shows that the ocean outfall in August 2017 was largely or partially funded by the county. In 2018, it mentions that they helped finance upgrades. In June 2019, they helped finance upgrades. July 2020, the county helped finance upgrades. Just looking at solely the construction of the outfall and the engineering, which was a $42 million project, the city contributed 58% and the county contributed almost 42%. This is important to know, I believe, important to know because not just the county supplying 42% of the debt service on the outfall, but also if this deal went through, this would be the operating and maintenance costs. This is information gleaned from our finance director, Bert Dukes. And as I understand it, this is if we partnered with this, then their share of operating and maintenance costs would be 55% compared to our 36%. So they have a significant contribution now. They would have a significant contribution if we partnered with them. And regardless, they've had a significant financial interest in us for many, many, many years. This is just one of their own slides, just articulating what I just said. While it also highlights that the outfall will serve our needs for 50 plus years, while only using 33% of its average daily hydraulic design capacity. That's important figure to remember for later. Also important to know that right now they continue to be a good partner and will be a good partner with the biosolids disposal. Right now, our biosolids, or sludge, if you will, is transported by ourselves in our own truck up to a farm up near Milton and land applied. And we've got a deal that's actually a very good deal, I believe, with the county where they will be taking our own biosolids from us and transporting it to their own plant and dealing with that. And the previous administration should get a pat on the back for doing a great job in articulating that deal. So back to our plant. Here's what we got now out to the ocean. What do we discharge? Well, Bert Dukes conservatively figured what are the flows based on a conservative 10 million gallon per day capacity of our existing pipe. Now, this is from all influent flow sources, which of course is Rehoboth, Henlopen Acres, North Shores, Dewey, and the counties. But right now, what we're using is just that lower quarter almost of the pipe, where it shows that our highest average monthly flow is about 27%. Now, this is referring to average monthly flow because the flow peaks and wanes. So it can at times be a little higher, can be a little lower. Of course, what this means is that the unused capacity averages about 73%. Yeah, it can go up a little higher, it can go down a little bit, but that's 73% of unused capacity of that pipe. So let's take a look at the Sussex County owned and operated Wolf Neck Regional Wastewater Facility. Again, that's just about 4 miles up the road. They have a lagoon system with land application where they use spray irrigation. This is just showing their Unified Sussex Sewer District in red. And their Wolf Neck Regional Wastewater Facility service area is altogether about 25 miles. They service over 19,000 individual residential dwelling units there, 19 hotels, 98 restaurants. What I think is important to note is that in 2021, the average daily treated flow at the Wolf Neck Regional Wastewater Facility was about 1.5 million gallons a day and serviced about 60% of that 19,000, which means they served about 11,400 residential dwellings, plus the commercial sector. And why that's important is I like to be mindful of that figure. 1.5 million gallons from the Wolf Neck translates into over 11,000 residential dwellings, plus the commercial sector. So again, what we're all talking about here is essentially is that there's two wastewater treatment plants in close proximity to each other. Again, about 4-ish miles between each other. And again, because of the unused capacity of about 73% of our ocean outfall pipe, because of that, the county came to us and wants to connect to the city's outfall. And with the goal of reducing flows at their regional wastewater facility by diverting to our outfall. So what does this do? If they connect with us, then that means that they're sending us an additional county flow of about 19% of capacity, which is about close to 2 million gallons per day that they are asking for, which of course commensurately reduces the unused capacity by 19% from 73% to 54%. I want to let you know that we did have a meeting with DENREC per our last meeting. We said we would do that. We were able to connect with them. We met with Secretary Garvin and 2 other representatives of his on January 6th. City representatives that attended that meeting include myself, Sharon, Kevin Williams, Evan Miller, and Jeff Sturdivant as our engineer. They were the participants with this meeting. Bert Dukes and Lynn were not participants, but they did listen in on this. The meeting outcome. Well, in meeting with him and his staff, we posed questions prior to the meeting, so they had a heads up. Secretary Garvin was very gracious to share his time with us, but was reluctant to comment specifically because he doesn't have full information before him. Secretary Garvin was clear that going through the process is important and technical details will determine DENREC's response to proposals and city's permit. And while Secretary Garvin indicated that 2 separate permits were likely needed and that DENREC is supportive of efforts to partner and to reduce pollutants in the inland bays, he is unable to provide commitments one way or the other without specific information. And I think Hans of the county kind of gave us this heads up, and it proved true that without specific proposal in front of him, the secretary is reluctant to give us a response and any guidance therefore. So from here, I wanted to take you to what I call, what I have identified as components of the proposal in front of us. These are the different elements, I call them, that I've identified, and I'd like to go through them fairly quickly with you. One of the issues was permitting. And of course, we just talked with the secretary about that. But here's an example of the Sussex County South Coastal Wastewater Treatment Plant. And in the top right corner, the Selbyville Wastewater Treatment Plant. So this is a situation not unlike us with 2 wastewater treatment plants in close proximity. These are about 10 miles apart. And they both discharge highly treated effluent from 2 treatment plants into the ocean. Their permitting process, of course, are processed and allowed by DENREC. And there, the South Coastal County holds its own permit for their wastewater treatment plant in the outfall. And Selbyville holds its own permit for the wastewater treatment plant in their outfall. And again, they both discharge highly treated effluent from 2 plants into the ocean. So that's not unlike our system in Rehoboth Beach, where we've got the Rehoboth Beach wastewater treatment plant and we've got the county regional wastewater facility. And so the permits, again, are issued by and controlled by DENREC. And we believe it's likely that the permitting for both of these facilities would mirror the same permitting process as for the South Coastal wastewater treatment plant and the Selbyville wastewater treatment plant. Why we base this on, again, the secretary was not black and white with his responses, but the 7 of us that listed in, each one of us believe that what he was intimating was that there would be this exact process where there are 2 permits, 1 issued to each wastewater facility. With that, I wanted to go to the next element. I call these elements of the deal. And we had talked earlier about emergency flow diversion. This provides bidirectionality of this connecting pipe that provides this safety feature to us, that if during the normal flows, you can see the direction going down toward the ocean. But in an emergency event, they would cut off the flow to the ocean down here and reverse the flow, and it would go up to the Wolf Neck Regional Wastewater Facility and be stored in their lagoons until such time as we resolve any problems, and it would be sanitized and returned to normal flow direction. That's an extra safety feature. Another element we talked about was waste load allocation. The county's requested a 2.0 million gallons per day allocation. They proposed that through a 12-inch pipe. They said that we have the opportunity to request a larger pipe, that if we wanted, if we thought we needed greater emergency capacity to reverse flow it, we could do that, but that was up to us. And you'll also recall they indicated that they did some analysis that they could go, I believe is, I can't remember if it's 1.25 or 1.5 million gallons a day, up to 2.25 million gallons per day. But their request to us specifically was for a 2 million gallon per day allocation. Another element for me is we want to do no harm to the future development within the city. And in the slide and presentation of the county, they indicated that the no sewer planning study's been done yet, but yes, it could be done. But they also indicate here that Rehoboth wastewater facilities discharging less than 10% of the allowable waste load allocation at this point. So I'm just trying to keep in mind, does this harm us in future expansion by the 4 hotels that are likely to be coming and partitionings and bigger houses being made? Again, so coming back to do no harm, this additional 19% capacity right here leaves us an unused average capacity of 54%. Being mindful that I said earlier, this 19% is up to 2 million gallons. And earlier in that chart that we showed, map of the county's territory, it indicated that that 1.5 million gallons of discharge serviced over 11,000 houses, plus 19 hotels, plus 98 restaurants. And if that's true for just this amount here, it seems that we could interpolate that we shouldn't have any problem because we would never match that capacity of 11,000 dwellings any time into the future. So again, we can conduct studies if we need to, and just to verify that all that. But in my mind, I think we're probably going to be all right, not do any harm. Again, if we decided to consummate this deal with the county. Another element I have is purchase or lease. Purchase, again, is a one-time payment Lease, well, it could be a one-time payment. It would likely be structured, I guess, in multiple payments. But also the difference between the lease and the purchase for me is the lease is time limited. And at some point, we would need to renegotiate at some point in the future and do this all over again. So the county in their slide presentation to us suggested a one-time payment, and that's what their desire is. So county payment amount, is that 7.6 a fair amount? That's an excellent question. Based again on their presentation to us, they indicated that how they came to the figure of 7.6 million. And just to remind the commissioners that our staff and Jeff Sturdivant of GHD have told us that they thought this deal was 7.6 million was a very fair deal. So how are the payment funds to be used? However the commissioners decide. If you recall, the city administration suggested that we use the county payment to give relief to city wastewater service users by applying the payment funds to a pending increase in sewer rates. Got to be mindful that we've already approved, if the commissioners, of 58% in the rates to start in 2024. And just to clarify, this giving relief to city wastewater users, that is city property owners, city users within the incorporated limits of the city of Rehoboth Beach. Those are the ones that would benefit from pay down or use of this funds. And this is shared in a city presentation that was made December 6th. And here's a chart that Bert Dukes had made. And again, every meeting, I believe, I've tried to be mindful that at some point there's an increase in annual fees coming up so that it doesn't surprise us. And this chart, I think, does a good job of showing the average two-person household is somewhere in between here. But if you look at your bill and you're using 50,000 gallons a year, then you're paying about $860 a year. And that with a 58% increase is already approved, go about $500 increase a year. And if you're in the higher range, you go from 1,000 to it's almost a $600 increase in wastewater rates there. Bert, do you have anything you want to add? No, Bert may not be on. Next element that I've identified that I wanted to share with you is protecting the environment in terms of quality control. We've talked about this. On each agency's site, they have their own facilities to monitor the quality of the effluent that's discharged at each facility. And the goal here, of course, would be that any pollution event is caught on site and minimal, if any, pollution event would occur out into the ocean. Try to catch it here as quickly as they can. Yes, there might be some that escapes, but largely when it's caught here, then it can be identified if there's a pollution event in the ocean, can be identified which facility had poor quality effluent. Going from protecting the environment and quality control to protecting the environment in terms of nutrients. The nutrients from the spray irrigation, of course, leach into the ground and eventually go to water bodies. And of course, the problem would be going to more sensitive water bodies than the ocean. But we've got to be mindful that the nutrients have to go somewhere. They're either going to go into one water body eventually or into the ocean. And I think the important thing to note about this proposal, that if it goes to the ocean, that with the permitting process, the two permits would still achieve and have limits on the maximum nutrient loading on the ocean. And by observing the same existing nutrient loading limits that we have now, the modeling for pollution would remain the same. So we would be within our same permit limits if we go and partner with the county. And this is just notified here. I put this in, you know, we're getting some negativity, and, you know, that's understandable. I think there's some people that want to penalize Sussex County for overgrowth, and I can understand that. But I just wanted to throw this in because I didn't want it skimmed over, that the county has already done planning ahead. They have some upgrades for Wolf Neck and Inland Bays that will help them increase capacity. They already have agreements with Artesian and Lewis Board of Public Works and Rehoboth Beach for additional treatment and flow diversification. And also they let us know that they've already applied for permits with DENREC to be able to expand capacities at these different facilities. So they've got options. So not doing a deal with them is not necessarily going to penalize them or harm them. But you know, what we decide is what we decide. This is a slide from the December 6th presentation. And I just wanted to go over the pros. I think I've caught most of these. This is done by the staff, if you recall, when any contribution by the commissioners, but this is created by staff for us. Pro is reduced nutrients being land applied to inland bays, watershed. We've talked about that. The city would receive $7.6 million. We've talked about that. 58% rent rate increase could be reduced. We've talked about that. Treated effluent water quality would be measured at each facility. We've talked about that. Emergency flow diversion flexibility. Talked about that. City would have lower operational and maintenance costs. We've talked about that. Some of the cons, of course, additional nutrients would be discharged to the ocean. Again, that can be a con, but we also, as discussed, know that it would be within the current permit limits. So it would match the modeling for preventing pollution events. The city would have less surplus waste load allocation. And again, through some of my slides, I tried to demonstrate my thought that based on the figures that we would not do any harm to future development. And then the perceived loss of outfall control is a con. That I think had to do with the thought of issuing, DENREC issuing the Wolf Neck their own permit versus issuing total permit for both of us. So again, I've gone over all these things: purchase price, allocation of capacity, purchase versus lease, permitting, perceived loss of outfall control by the city, emergency flow diversion, impact on future growth, how will payment from the county be used, saying no sends a message about overgrowth, benefit of realizing lower operation and maintenance costs to the city, reduce nutrients to the bay, more to the ocean, and protection of quality of affluents. And obviously I haven't been thorough on this, on these, but you know, if we did move forward to town hall, then we would certainly perhaps want to emphasize these and expand them. But you know, over the last 3 meetings, I've tried to identify things that have been recurring topics. And I'm calling them sticking points because I think we have different perspectives on some of these things. 4 points have to do with permitting. Who holds the permits and what is an acceptable permitting arrangement? Is selling off up to 2 million gallons per day acceptable? Is selling off extra capacity as a one-time purchase versus a lease acceptable? And what is a satisfactory price to purchase for the county to purchase a portion of excess capacity? So as mentioned on the agenda, and as I mentioned at the end of our last meeting, I don't want to draw this out, that if there's already a sentiment on these 4 items, then let's express them, because that may either end the deal or prepare us to move on to a town hall. So what I would like to do, what I would hope we can do for the rest of this meeting, is focus on these 4 motions to address the 4 sticking points and be able to resolve some of these things. So I would like, if we get to that point, we can either have a motion and then discussion and then public input, Actually, there is no public signed up to speak. But we can do a motion and discussion and then vote, do the next motion and discussion and vote, whatever the commissioners like, so that we can move forward. Are there any comments on anything? Commissioner Legree?
I've discussed this many times, and my sticking points continue to be the same. This is forever. If you sell something, you sell it forever and you never get it back. And we're selling 40% of our waste load. We have 425 pounds, we're selling 170 pounds, and that's gone forever. We'll never get back to 425 pounds. The county they have asked DENREC for a separate permit for part of our waste load. And once they get that permit, it's never coming back. So whatever they do with their 170 pounds, now we're just talking BOD and TSS, whatever they do with their 170 pounds is up to them. And we have nothing, I mean, nothing to say about it forever. We keep talking sale of capacity, sale of permit, sale of waste allocation. Why do we have to sell this? Why can't the county lease our portion of our outfall? We control what's going out into the ocean. Once we sell our part of our permit to DENREC issues 2 separate permits, we lose control. If we keep 100% of our permit and just sell, have a service contract, then the county can put their 2 million gallons out through our outfall. We can have a contract just like the biosolids agreement, where we have 25 years and then 25 years to update it. I can't understand why that wouldn't be a better solution than selling something forever. We all know the urban planners tell you to not get rid of your assets, enhance your assets. And I think we're faced with selling 40% of one of our best assets that we have.
Commissioner, I'm willing to let you finish, but do you think it would be prudent to address each of these motions one at a time so you don't have to reiterate again, or do you want to finish?
Which would you like for me to address first? Load allocation, that's what I was doing.
Well, I guess I would like the outcome of today's meeting is that we have a vote on each of those 4 sticking points.
I would like for us to have a vote on accepting or rejecting the county's proposal. If you recall, the county has said if the nutrients stay in, they'll pull out. If we don't have separate permits, they'll pull out. There's been no negotiation on the $7.6 million. In fact, I don't think they're interested in negotiating on anything. So I'll do whatever you'd like. If you want to break this down into 4 proposals, I'm not sure why, but if you want to do that, I'm willing to do it.
Well, Commissioner, I'd like to do the 4 proposals because while you have been very vocal on one or more of these, not all of us have, and I think we all need the opportunity, and I think it would be good to entertain each of these one at a time.
It's up to you. It's up to you, Mayor. You set the agenda.
Well, notice I phrased these suggested motions in the affirmative. That's not to be presumptive that the commissioners are going to vote in favor of all of them. It's just easier to understand what the motion is and be able to turn it up or vote it down. Any other commissioners have a preference? Commissioner Sharp, yes, ma'am.
Just thinking out loud, Mayor, and to the rest of the commissioners, if the issue for me remains the sale versus a lease, if they're in the order that you just put them up on that slide, that would be the last vote we take. Is that right? That's where the 7.6 shows up.
Right.
And I guess I'm wondering, there has been so much input, negative input from those who have weighed in, who are our taxpayers, against the sale of this. If that is the sticking point, and the county, I would have to agree with Commissioner Legree, the county does not seem, I think it's very revealing that they are not prepared in your most recent meeting to give clarity on which way they will or will not do something. But we're being asked the exact opposite without any clarity, other than just assuming that, 7.6 is the deal, the sale is the deal. We're being asked to take the vote. So for me, the 7.6 is the most predominant breaking point for me, and it does not appear that it is up for discussion with the county. And the other issue that I've been talking about since November 15th is my concerns about the level of awareness and the lack of support that we have on this from our taxpayers.
Well, the county, I think, to me, has been very clear in their asks. And that's why I developed these motions. And again, I would like to go through these motions today to see what everybody feels like, because not everybody's spoken up. But as a result of those motions, if some are favorable, some are not, I would take those results back to the county and see if they want to pull out or if they want to continue negotiation. Again, they kind of made their points clear in my mind, but I think it's fair. We would want to vote on these and then go back to it. I would rather not do a package deal because these are the things that you all have brought up consistently. And I feel that we should address them one at a time so that we have them on the record for the constituents. And if all these were favored, then I think we would likely head toward a town hall meeting. But if they're disfavored and they're turned down, rejected, and we may end it right there. And so why keep spending time and spinning our wheels going forward if we're not going to support parts of it, all of it, whatever. If you don't like my program, then fine, suggest another thing. But this is what I think the best path forward is for us, so that we have clarity at the end of this meeting on what the next step is.
Mayor, Commissioner Gossett here, and I know some hands are up, and I don't know who went first, but
I'm sorry, I can't. Yeah, go ahead, Patrick, Ed, and Jay.
In the presentation that you shared this morning, thank you for putting that together. It kind of brings everything together. But on the county's proposal, I believe the phrase that was in there, which is, I guess, this PowerPoint is their proposal. I don't know if there's ever been a formal written proposal put together or not, but the language there says 7.6 million tied to a future county permit issuance. And that's the condition that I see in one of their PowerPoint slides. But help me understand this through, that you're meeting with Secretary Garvin. They were not willing to commit to a permit one way or the other, what have you. They wanted to see specific proposals on that. So if the county's 7.6 million payment is tied to a future county permit issuance, but we don't have that guarantee, does that just mean this deal falls apart? Anybody?
Kevin or Sharon or Jeff, do you want to help me on that?
Sure, Mayor. Thank you.
I would say yes.
Correct. The county has submitted an application. They have to do a building permit, so they have a lot of permitting yet to
Kevin,
do.
Evan, Sharon, Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Kevin. Can you hear me?
Mayor, I agree. The county, I heard, made it clear that they do not want to negotiate. These were the points, and I think they made it very clear why.
So we would be if depending on what happens today, if we were to agree to this, then would there be a formal written proposal that had to be presented to DENREC? Is that the application for the permits, or what's the process that goes forward? And then if, DENREC denies this or says, well, you can't do it that way, you got to do it this way, does that then come back and again, the deal fall apart? Or I'm unclear of how this process moves forward, just being informed by PowerPoint presentations.
Mayor, so I would say that this step is needed for the City of Rehoboth Beach commissioners to say yes or no. And then that would be presented to DENREC, because the secretary, in speaking to him last week, was very clear in that he needs more information. So this is the first step. The next step would be then to have that proceeding with the county commissioners and take it with attorneys present to form some kind of arrangement for the purchase and then bring that to DENREC.
We haven't really had this conversation with the county, I know, but Sharon, I believe you're right. This is a multi-step process there. This is the first step. And the county wants to know if we're interested or not. If we're not interested, and then it dies and it ends there. But if we are interested, then the next step for the county, I believe, is that they've got to go in front of their council to get approval to consummate this deal. Now, all the details aren't going to be written down at this early stage, but I would expect at some point they would be written down, and then we would be bringing that, the county would get that to us, and we would be bringing that back to you all to look at the details. But again, there's no point in going that far if we're going to end it at today's meeting. Tony, I've got Ed, Commissioner Sernowski, Jay Legree, and then you. All right, anything else? Commissioner Gossett, you okay?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sernowski, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Is it true that we have not actually received anything in writing from the county yet?
Sharon, refresh my memory. We have not, I think what we have, one generic sheet, but there's nothing that gives us any detail on anything, no.
Well, Mayor, I appreciate the format that you've outlined. I think it's the appropriate steps to move this forward. I'm, I guess, a little frustrated in the process. I think much of this time we've been negotiating against ourselves, which is no benefit to us. We probably should have come up with these from the very beginning and not wasted so much time going back and forth amongst ourselves with answers that we can't answer. And I also wish that my hesitation with being vocal at this point is I think indeed we need to put, yes, we're going to move forward with this item or this item, but part of this is also, and maybe the county will not negotiate with us, but part of this is a strategy to negotiate, which I don't feel comfortable being completely candid in an open forum like this when part of this should be a negotiation. And I think we've not helped ourselves at all from that point. General comments there. Do you want us to give specific comments on each of the 4 items now? Do you want to do it one by one? How do you want to move forward?
I would like to entertain a motion one at a time in the order that they're there so that we know where people feel. I think we can all guess what Commissioner Legree's feeling on permitting, for instance, but I think it would be good to document all 7 commissioners' feelings on this.
Mayor, let me also just comment that, the county came to the city. There's no formal, this was their request, and the request of the mayor was to bring it forward to the commissioners. Mayor did that. I think this is the starting point. So as far as the process, it, again, is up to the commissioners to say yes or no, and then talk about the process going forward. Without that, we're really stuck to the point where we can't really speak to the county council and move off of the page that we're on now. As far as negotiations, I mean, I'm not going to say the county is not going to negotiate, but they made it clear what their contribution would be to the city based on a logical formula. At least the staff and I think that that's a logical formula, and the reasons set forth for the city to move forward and accept this. So there's room for negotiation, but this needs to be the point, at this time, because the county can't wait for a long period of time. And as the mayor said, the city needs to make a decision. And then we can move forward.
Commissioner Legree, your hand's up.
Yes, Mayor. I invite everybody to review the stream of the meeting where the county made their presentation. And I've done that. And it's very clear that if the permit allocation does not go through, there's no deal. If the lease sale controversy doesn't end up as sale, there's no deal. And there was a couple of more, if their nutrients are talked about, if you recall those words, there's no deal. So I think we're looking at some my way or the highway proposals. And quite frankly, I'm troubled that we're seem to be constantly cast into the position as being the bad guys. I can tell you this, if we lose control of our outflow, our citizens are going to tell us about being the bad guys. And that's about all I can say, Mayor, other than to go forward with the agenda that you and City Manager have agreed upon. I'll talk about anything.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp.
Just want to put a fine point on if the term purchase is the only term that is being considered, then that tells me everything I need to know. And I think the answer to that is yes.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If the terminology of purchase is the only word that the county is able to offer, if that's the case, then that tells me everything I need to know, that they are not flexible on that point. And I just want to confirm that I am correct about that. Every indication I see, I am correct. I just want to make sure that I am, because I'm often wrong. So if I'm wrong about this, that would be great. But every indication appears to me that the word is purchase.
I would agree with that. And I think Commissioner Legree just articulated some of his observations from the meeting that we had on the county in mid-November, and that they were I've said pretty adamant about which way they want to go. And that's why I think we should take a vote on these 4 motions so that we respond to them and have an answer to them. If we're going to end it, then let's have a rationale behind saying we're going to terminate this discussion, or let the county back out if they don't want to change their mind on anything.
Well, Mayor, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and make a motion so we can discuss and vote on at least the first item.
Go ahead.
Mayor, I move to support that the permit process will be. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to do these in a different order.
Okay.
Mayor, I move to support that the deal be structured in a way as to be a one-time purchase if the county proposal is solidified.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Bennett to support the deal. The purchase deal would be structured as a one-time purchase if the county proposal is solidified. Is there any additional discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. This is for a one-time purchase. Would be acceptable. Commissioner, I'm just doing them across the screen here. Commissioner Susan Gay,
No.
Commissioner Tony Sharp,
No.
Commissioner Jay Legree,
No.
Commissioner Ed Chernowski,
No.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett,
No.
Commissioner Tim Bennett,
No.
and the chair votes yes. Does not mean I'm for the deal 100%, but for that one question, I vote yes. Can we get a second motion? Ed, you want to do the favors for all of them?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I will. I move to support the county's offer of 7.6 million to purchase a portion of the permitted daily average load allocation and equivalent of up to 2 million gallons per day of the city's ocean outfall capacity is in an appropriate payment if the county proposal is solidified.
We have a second?
Second.
Who did the second? I can't see you.
I did, Susan.
Susan. We have a motion by Commissioner Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Susan Gay to support the county's offer of 7.6 million to purchase a portion of the permitted daily average load allocation as noted. If that is an appropriate payment amount if the county proposal is solidified. With that, I'd like to call the motion. We'll do a roll call vote.
Do a discussion first.
Yeah, additional discussion would be fine.
Yeah, so, we've talked about this number quite a few times. Bert and Kevin have articulated and have gone through how the math came up with, and I feel fairly comfortable with that. Although I still think it's a starting point and there should be some premium put on that. So my question is, how do we come up with what a premium on top of that should be? And I guess my question is towards Kevin or Bert. In addition to that, I think it would be incredibly helpful for us to know in addition to this 7.6 million, they're also taking on a greater percentage of the expenses going forward. I think up to 55% now. Is that right, Mayor?
That would be their total, yes. According to that chart.
I think if we could put take the next 20 years worth of capital improvement projects that are needed, let's put a dollar value on what that 42 to 55% is, I think would also be helpful for us to know. Those are just kind of going into this, those are thoughts for me that I think would be helpful.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner Legree?
Yes, I think Commissioner Chernowski has made some great points. We have already voted not to have a one-time purchase. However, if the county would lease or sign a service contract, those numbers that Commissioner Chernowski is talking about would be a very valid discussion, and I would support that. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else?
Well, I have a question, I guess. Does our previous vote on not doing a one-time payment make this motion moot because of the amount stated was part of the one-time payment thing?
Well, my hope was that we would go back and consider a long-term lease,
right,
in lieu of that failed motion.
Okay.
And while I understand the county's evaluation and their formula for how they came up with 7.6 million, I'm giving more weight to our staff that indicated they thought it was a very good deal. So that'll reflect my vote. Is there any further commissioner discussion?
Mayor, could we just have Kevin articulate that once more?
What, articulate what?
His thoughts on the fee and its fairness.
Kevin, are you available?
Sure, Mayor, thanks. Yeah, we did the analysis, back when they first came to us, and we along with GHD, our consultant, and our guys down at the plant, and we just felt, as Bert participated as well, felt that it was a fair and reasonable offer. If you go back to your presentation, Mayor, where Bert provided that table that shows the overall cost of the outfall by percentage, by what the county has already paid for, 42% of the capital costs. If we were to sell a portion of the outfall capacity to them, they're then going to help us with any major CIP projects that would come down the road based upon a percentage in the agreement. So their offer at 7.6 was going to take their overall contribution to the capital cost of that ocean outfall to be above 50%, which in my mind strikes a pretty good deal for the city. And then all the O&M would be split based upon flow, which, as Bert also showed you in that presentation, right now they're paying about 55% of the cost because they're using more flow than we're using. And then I guess the third point would be if the county invests a lot of money to run pipe to connect Wolf Neck to one of their other facilities, I think we run the risk of them pulling less flow or sending less flow to Rehoboth, and then our O&M costs go up because the agreement on the O&M costs are based upon flow. And if they divert X amount of flow from us that they're sending now, which we like to get, and send it somewhere else, then our costs of operating that plant are going to be astronomical. And you already saw Bert's comparison of what he pays down at Bethany versus what he pays here in Rehoboth Beach. So those are the points I would say in regards to the costs.
Thank you, Kevin. Anything else, Ed?
I would just just going to reiterate, Kevin, you're saying that if the deal falls through with the county and they divert some of the current outfall, some of the 42% somewhere else, and our costs are going to skyrocket essentially, and that's not something that we've taken into account in our projections. So in a couple years, the rate increase that we've already counted on is going to be much more dramatic than it already is. Is that?
Commissioner, I don't think we would notice it there because I don't think their proposal is really going to kick in for many years. So they'd have to construct the pipeline to send it somewhere else other than here. But if they do that, then down the road, then our O&M costs are going to go up considerably. They're on the hook for our capital cost based on the 2017 agreement. But the agreed upon procedures report that we use to split O&M costs is based on flow. And so as their amount of flow goes down, our percentage of the O&M costs will go up accordingly.
All right, thanks, Kevin. That's helpful.
You're on mute.
Commissioner Legree, thank you, Tom.
The county would incur additional expenses if they divert their Dewey Beach flow south to South Coastal. That just does not make financial success, or does not make financial sense. So I suspect we can count on Dewey Beach and Henlopen Acres coming into our outfall or coming into our treatment plant, no matter what happens. I mean, it just makes, and also West Rehoboth, it would just cost them too much money to send that somewhere else. So my anticipation is that the interjurisdictional agreement that we have right now, the one that was signed on 8 August in 2017, will remain in effect for 50 years. It just doesn't make sense to not follow through with that, because they're paying the capital expenses right now, as you said. So I don't count that as very valid. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? So we have a motion in front of us to support that if the county proposal is solidified, that the county's offer of $7.6 million to purchase a portion of the daily average load allocation is appropriate payment. With that, I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Tony Sharp?
No.
Commissioner Legree?
No.
Commissioner Chernowski?
Abstain.
Commissioner Gossett?
No.
Commissioner Bennett?
I'll vote no.
1, 2, 3, 4. Commissioner Gay?
Oh,
No?
correct. No.
And the chair votes yes. Looks like I'm being a minority. So with that, let's go to the third motion. We got 2 more. We're halfway through.
If you could bring the slide up again, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move to support that the permit process will be administered by DENREC if the county's proposal is solidified.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Tim Bennett that if the county proposal is solidified, to support the permit process as administered by DENREC. Is there additional discussion? Commissioner Legree?
I believe we break faith with the citizens of Rehoboth and our voters if we allow someone else to control a portion of our outfall and thereby can affect the discharge that we're putting out into the ocean. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just to clarify, Mayor, that what this motion is saying is that DENREC, or rather the county, would administer both the application for our permit and the new county permit?
No.
Okay, what does this mean then?
This means that we each apply, we each apply separate. Kevin Williams, help me here. As the way I see it is the county applies for their permit, the city applies for our permit, and DNREC issues each entity their own permit, just as is done for the South
But would the,
treatment plant holding their own permit and the Selbyville wastewater treatment plant holding their own permit.
but the county permit, basically what they're be able to produce would be taken from our permit, so it would be a reduction in our permit?
Commissioner, it would be a reduction in our allocated waste load or waste load allocation.
So we're, again, giving up a portion of our permit would then basically be transferred to the county. Is that correct?
They would get a commensurate percentage of the waste load allocation attributed to their permit.
Thank you.
And
you.
Evan,
Go ahead.
would this preclude us, instead of having a one-time purchase, it being more of a long-term lease, would it preclude us from doing that?
I don't think so, Commissioner. If we wanted to go after them for a lease, yeah, we'd have to ask them, obviously.
Okay, so, but in your mind,
I don't think it would affect the permit.
okay, so we could have a long-term lease and still have their percentage permitted separately, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Legree.
Why would we do that? If we're leasing and we're controlling the outfall, why would we want to give another entity a part of our legal permit? I think that would be, you just never want to do that because your permit never comes back. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Legree.
No.
Again, the motion is to support the permit process as administered by DNREC, whatever that process is. We have one no. Commissioner Chernowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett,
No.
Commissioner Bennett,
No.
Commissioner Gay,
No.
Commissioner Sharp,
No.
and the chair votes yes. That the motion, so far, all three motions have been denied, obviously. Let's get through this last one, please. There we go.
Mayor, I move to support that an acceptable allocation for the county is up to 2 million gallons per day if the county proposal is solidified.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Tim Bennett, that if the county proposal is solidified, then an acceptable allocation for the county is up to 2 million gallons per day. Is there any additional discussion? If not,
Mayor,
Commissioner Legree, go ahead.
we could easily handle 2 million gallons a day, no problem, if they would accept a lease.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Chernowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Gossett,
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp,
Yes.
4, 5, Commissioner Legree.
Yes. See, you got one.
The chair votes yes. Hallelujah. With that, I think we're at the end of our agenda. What I said earlier, what I said earlier is I think the next steps will be that, of course, the county's watching now, so they know what it is, but I'll be contacting them with the results and leave it in their ballpark to see if they want to counter with anything. Commissioner Chernowski and then Commissioner Legree.
Yeah, Mayor, I was just going to ask if we might entertain a motion to put that one-time purchase into a lease format to keep this moving forward.
I don't understand your question. With the very first thing we voted on was for a one-time purchase versus a lease.
Correct, Mayor. What I'm asking is, should we entertain a motion that would put a lease in the affirmative rather than a purchase?
If you like, you may do that. You want to take a minute to word it? You move that if the deal is something like a motion, that if the county deal proposal is solidified, that an acceptable a lease arrangement is an acceptable payment contract. Glenn, you want to help?
I guess it'd just be a motion that, I mean, you want to say to the county, we don't like the deal you gave us, but we'd be interested in entertaining a long-term lease or service contract. So I think it's a motion confirming that the commissioners would at least consider a lease arrangement with the county. Maybe just leave it at that the commissioners would be willing to consider a lease arrangement with the county for Isafluid. Just to send the message that there's some consensus among the commissioners that that's a form that you might be willing to consider.
The possible motion would be to confirm that the commissioners would consider a lease arrangement with the county.
Right.
Commissioner LeGree, Commissioner Sarnowski, do you have anything further?
No, I believe that this deal is good for the city and it should move forward. I do agree with some of the commissioners that some of the how it's arranged could be different. But I don't want that to stop the process. I want us to move forward. So I wanted any way we can do that. I'd like to do that.
All righty. Well, we'll come back to you for a motion. Commissioner LeGree?
I agree with Commissioner Chernowski. This is a good thing for Sussex County. It's a good thing for us, and it should move forward. I have one thing that might even improve it. Why don't we ask Sussex County if they'd like to come in the front of our wastewater treatment plant instead of the back? What would it take, Kevin, to put another 1.6 million gallons a day onto our treatment capacity? I know that was talked about back in 2017.
We don't, Commissioner, we don't have that capacity in the plant.
I beg your pardon?
We don't have that excess capacity in the plant, 1.6 MGD.
You're saying you don't have it in the plan?
Correct.
P-L-A-N-T. Okay. And where is it the oxidation ditches or is it the headworks? Where's the stopping point? It may be the filters. I just don't know.
Well, right now it's just the process, right? We're rated at 3.2 or 4 MGD. And if in the summertime we're averaging, 2.6, 2.7, we just don't have the capacity overall, unless we want to take on an upgrade and add the third clarifier and add the third ditch, which I don't think is the intent behind this.
So you're saying that in order for us to handle 5 million gallons a day, we'd have to add another oxidation ditch or do more clarifiers, something like that?
Correct. It'd be a significant upgrade to the plant.
There are companies who the technology has really improved since 1983 when we built our plant. In fact, the technology has really improved in the last 10 years. And there are biofilm reactors that can handle a lot of flow, and I'm sure you're keeping up with that too. But there are companies that make modules that can add to your wastewater treatment plant that can add another 1 million gallons a day or more with these aerated membrane biofilm reactors. And I think maybe it would be worth looking at upgrading our plant so that they could just pump their stuff down the pipeline and in the front of our plant. Now, that may not be possible and they may not be interested, but I'm interested in, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask for clarification on the change of purchase to lease. It would still be just the outfall and not going through the plan. And I think this previous discussion we've just had answered that, which yes, is that it would not be going through the plant. So in my mind, that doesn't change all of the other concerns about nutrient levels and permit process. The lease versus purchase doesn't really change that. And that's my concern. So what we voted on, I'll remind people again, what was voted on 6.5 years ago was treated effluent through our wastewater treatment plant to the outfall. And if we can look back to that time frame, and where we are today, I think we also need to give the city a big pat on the back for that outfall, because at the time it was so controversial because the competing technology was land application. And there were many people who were very concerned about sending to the ocean, and there were photos of toilets on beaches and all of this. And at the same time, it was a concern of many that were we choosing the right one? Well, fast forward to where we are today, we've clearly made the right choice. And I think the city should be very proud of that. But it was a rigorous effort over time, with every detail, and we go beyond the permitting. I mean, we've had a couple of accidents recently where even with the spill, we didn't come anywhere near our permitted levels, because that's how rigorous our process is. And unless that's what we voted on. So unless that changes, with it going through the front end, as Jay just asked about, I think we're not putting the same rigor that we once did, and it's not what people voted on. Anyway, that's all I have.
I think the vote on against the one-time purchase indicates to the county that a lease would be acceptable, but I'm also very amenable to a motion by Ed to send that message to the county that we would consider a lease arrangement. So Ed, do you want to make that motion?
Sure, Mayor, I move that if the county's proposal should be solidified, that a long-term lease arrangement by the city would be considered.
Have a second? We got a second. We've got a motion by Commissioner Sernowski and a second by Commissioner Tim Bennett that if the deal with the county is solidified, that the commissioners would consider a long-term lease arrangement with the county. Is there any additional discussion? Patrick?
Yes, just a question here, going back to Commissioner Gay's concerns about, there are other elements of the discussion that we've had with the county of the type of nutrient that will be, or amount of nutrients that would be passed through the ocean outfall. I don't think that the aspect of sale versus lease is the only aspect that needs to be discussed, to opening those negotiations back up. I mean, that certainly is a starting place, but I think we need to also reflect back on just what effluent they're going to produce and the quality of that, and how does that affect what we currently are pumping into the ocean.
Well, I think all those questions, this may not end it. If the county's amenable to negotiating on some of these things, then those are additional questions I think we would certainly want to pose. Right now, however, we have out of 4 votes and motions, we have 3 that failed. In other words, 3 that are not accepting the proposal from the county. So it could die right there. Who knows? Let's find out. And that's why I have been aggressive in trying to get this exercise completed. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the table? And again, the motion on the table is to confirm the commissioners would consider a long-time lease agreement with the county for this deal. Commissioner Legree.
Yeah, and the prelude that Commissioner Sharnowski made is very important. This would be a lengthy and carefully drawn contract and lease, and I would certainly want to take in Commissioner Gay's comments. We went on the hook. The county didn't go on the hook. We went on the hook for this outfall, and it's owned by us, and it's owned by our citizens, and that contract needs to be very, very carefully written. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to call the question and start with Commissioner Gossett.
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett.
Yes, I think we should work with the county. I vote yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay.
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yes.
Commissioner Legree.
Yes, but with the same reservations that Commissioner Gay gave.
Commissioner Sharnowski.
Aye.
You, Mayor.
I'm sorry. I'm next. And the chair votes yes also. With that, I'd see the next steps again is to transfer this information, communicate with the county, and see if they have any counter offers or where they want to go with it. This has been, I believe, a good exercise without extending it definitely. And so I appreciate everybody giving thoughts today to it. If there's no further comments, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Before I adjourn, though, a reminder that 2 o'clock is when our budget meeting starts today. And so I'll adjourn this meeting at 12:48 p.m. Thank you very much.